Hello, good night, loyal opposition. Welcome, everybody. I want to say welcome to Junie. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Welcome, Nigel. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night, good night. I'm seeing so many people coming on. I just want to say thank you, loyal opposition. Tonight is going to be a good night. I hope everybody's ready. Good night, Vernon. Queen B, I see you. Good night. Good night, Mary. Good night, good night. Good night, Monica. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I am so excited to be your host, and I hope you're looking forward to what we have to offer tonight. I want to say good night to Queen. Good night to Owen. Good night to Marcia. Everybody's just logging in tonight. I'm so thankful to see so many people commenting in the comments from everywhere here in Barbados, all over the world. Good night, Nat. And let's not forget Judy. I'm seeing you as well, Judy. Good night, Judith. Okay, so for tonight's topic on the Marcia Wheat Show, we're going to be discussing education, agitation, motivate, and mobilize Africa and its diaspora. My name is SHAQUANI Hunte, and I will be your host. Some of the topics you can expect tonight in our first segment, we will be tackling Barbados Transport Augmentation Program and Bus Drivers Are Angry, presented by Maxine McCLEAN. Our second segment will be hear from the acting president of the Democratic Labour Party, Andre Worrell, with exciting news on annual conference and the way forward. We're also going to have a small presentation by myself, just really giving you an insight of how, as a young Democrat, really I plan to contribute and see the way forward for the party. In our third segment, we will be tackling the cybercrime bill with activists from Kenya and Haiti sharing their concerns about Barbados' cybercrime bill, which is still with the Joint Selection Committee. So we have lots in store with everybody tonight. Let me say hello to some more people. Good night, Ewan. So many people are saying good night. I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody and hear your comments, concerns, and how you expect everything to go. So don't be afraid to comment. Don't be afraid to speak. We're looking forward to reading your comments tonight, and we're really looking forward to all these wonderful presentations. I can say it's an absolute honor to be the host tonight, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity. And I'm really looking forward to what wonderful things we have in store. So let me see, some more people are saying good night. Let me just put up the comments. Good night, Peter King. And we're also saying some good night, Turney. Tamika is also saying good night. Maloney is also here saying good night. We're also having something from Beverly as well. There's Mr. Angel saying goodnight as well. So we have lots of people coming in to say goodnight. I'm super excited to tell you all about tonight's program. And if you missed it, I think that you'll be excited to see what we have in store. Bajan Brick, good night. Good night. Thank you for joining. Hi, good night, DaCosta. We have Marcia saying good night again. Thank you very much for being here. ADNG, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Angel. I can guarantee that there are a lot more wonderful young people out there just like me. I am not one in a million. There are many more, but thank you very much. Good night, Nicholas. Good night, Sugarcane. Good night, Dale. Thank you very, very much for joining. And I can see the numbers climbing, so I know everybody's just as excited as me to come on. They're wishing us a wonderful show. Thank you very much, Judith. Hi, Cheryl. Thank you for joining. Thank you very much, Lucinda. Thank you very, very much for all these well wishes. And I am looking forward to being your host tonight. And I think that we're going to have a very wonderful time. There's a lot of information coming tonight. So if you have to go and grab your pencil and paper, I think it's time that you need to get it, because there's going to be a lot of note taking, a lot of information that you can write down and you can take back and share. So if you need to pause, go and get your paper and pencil. I think now is the time, because we're going to be getting ready to start really soon. And I know that you're going to be excited just like I am. We have some more people joining. Good night, Cam. Mildred, good night as well. Thank you very much, Leanne. Good night to UK as well. Good night, Dave. Thank you very much. No, I'm not going to forget. The anthem is going to play in a few minutes. I'm just giving some more people some time to log on. So in about 2 minutes, the anthem is going to play. Good night, good night, good night. I'm so thankful, and I'm seeing so many people logging in. Good night, Edwin. So right now we are at 321 people viewing, and I think we're off to an excellent start. I'm looking forward to see everybody's comments and see all the interactions, and I think that you're going to have a wonderful time tonight. Loyal opposition, we're about to start and play the anthem right about now. So let's get ready. thank you everybody so much for reminding me, but I didn't forget to play our anthem. And our anthem is such a wonderful anthem. I am so thankful that we play this anthem at the beginning of every show because it means something. And we need to make sure that the people of Barbados understand and remember that the anthem of Barbados is very, very important. I want to thank everybody who's on for joining already, and we're looking forward for the presentation from Maxine McCLEAN. So we're just giving her a couple minutes to join, but while we're waiting on her, we have some more people coming in, logging on, telling us their well wishes. I see somebody told me they love my earrings. Thank you. But we're extremely excited to be here. We have some serious topics to talk about, but also some things to keep people engaged. And again, I just want to say thank you very much for Marcia and Dave for this opportunity to host, because I can say that they're doing good work for Barbadians and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm extremely excited for what we have in store tonight. We have a couple more people logging on. Let me see. So in case if some people logged in a little bit late and you missed what the first topic would be about, the first topic will be presented by Maxine McCLEAN. Maxine McCLEAN will be speaking on Barbados Transport Augmentation Program and Bus Drivers Are Angry. Presentation by Maxine McCLEAN. I know that a lot of us have been seeing what is going on the internet, have been seeing what's going on in the news, and some of us do catch fans, so we understand some of the frustrations that we're seeing with them. So I know that the presentation that she'll be sharing tonight will be really impactful because a lot of us want to know what is going on. I know I've been seeing a lot of people at the bus stop waiting for hours for buses, so that is a major issue. So some of the concerns that they're bringing have real impact, because imagine you're going to work for 9 o'clock and you leave your house for 7, saying you have more than enough time to get there. But in reality, when you get there, you don't see a bus at 7, you don't see one at 7:30, and you're not seeing anything at 9. You have to call in, and then that is impacting you. So if it impacts them, it will impact you. Do any of the commenters, any of the viewers, do you have any personal experiences with delays in terms of getting vans or buses? You can share in the comments and we can really discuss it, because I know that I can't be the only one. And seeing people on the road waiting on buses that are not coming, I know a lot of people here have to be experiencing that as well, those delays in getting public transportation. I know some of the concerns people also would have had is the cost. I know some of the concerns people would have had is the cost in terms of what it is like for bus fare, if it would increase, if they want to decrease it. Like, those are biting issues because an increase will impact us dearly. I'm seeing Cheryl is saying in the comments that St. Patrick's Lord bus I can understand. I know a lot of persons living in the country that sometimes you go in the bus terminal and you're waiting for buses for almost 4 hours. And that has to be crazy, because you really can't plan your life around waiting on a bus that you don't know when it's going to come. So really, how is the government going to address issues like this? Because I think we really need to come up with a plan, and it cannot just be adding more buses on the road, because clearly there's an issue. Buses are coming on the road, buses are going off the road swiftly, so that means we have a problem. Maybe we need to start fixing these roads. that the buses are traveling on, because there are a lot of potholes, and I know that could potentially be damaging to the buses. Because me, as a person who, the first day I put my car on the road, I drop in a pothole, and that was the end of that tire. So imagine people who it is their job to drive up and down on the road, and the roads are extremely poor, how it could really be impacting them. I really think that we need to address this. Well, just in the nick of time, I saw that Maxine is here. So I'm going to bring her on right now. So wait, let me see. Well,
Hello. Uh,
good morning, Maxine.
hello. And you know, when you're not supposed to have a problem, I was trying to get on. I don't know. I just sent Marcy a note, although I shouldn't because she's supposed to be on holiday, saying that I'm having a challenge getting on. But thanks a lot. But that's part of the test to make sure that you know how to handle an emergency
Definitely.
life. But and I had intended to talk about this for a little while because, and I'll give you a bit of background quickly to my choice of topic. I've always, well, so for several years now, worked, when I say work, not for pay, talk to entrepreneurs, small business people on a range of issues because that's an issue that I've taught in, over the years. And for me, one of the challenges that I find is that a lot of businesses end up working with government and even with companies where they do work on consignment, they often find themselves challenged. And recently, well, last year, I was trying to walk a gentleman who participated in this program through some financial issues. In fact, the sad thing is when he was looking to get into the business, at least to expand in terms of his involvement in transportation, he talked to me and I walked him through how we could utilize credit union resources and so on. And I'm sorry, but we have some crazy young people who pass here on motorcycles, so you might get some this, and they just seem to do it for the fun of it, up and down. And so I have followed his activities through this, and I thought that in light of some of the discussions recently, that I would actually have a look at it and kind of overview the program and kind of explain to people what it is and what are some of the challenges, because I spent some time talking to him, and then when I did some review of articles, I came across that. So the first slide really gives you the title, and if you go to the second slide, it explains that this program really was one that was started back in 2015. Of course, we know that changes in administration may bring changes in program titles sometimes and maybe modifications to the program. But back in 2015, the then minister, Michael Lashley, would have spoken to the public well, I think about this whole issue because, as you would know, we had an aging bus fleet. We still, well, we've had some new buses, but I've heard some complaints notwithstanding that as buses get on the road, and you mentioned a pothole the first time you drove your vehicle, you look at these electric buses and so on, and well, we are happy to see that we've had a significant mill and pave for those commuters who have to take the buses. But basically, it's a program. It started out as a pilot back in 2015 or so. And it really was one in which the government sought to introduce into their fleet to supplement or augment, and it was called the Transport Authority Service Integration Program, TASI. Now we have TAP, so similar transport authorities in there. So it is really a project which brings together the private service vehicles, because we're all public transport, but the publicly owned versus the privately owned transportation system. Of course, there was a significant difference which had to be addressed, and in looking at that, it talks about the fact that no. Well, let me get my slide to look at here. That there's no scheduled service, usually with your private concessionaires, the maxi, sorry, the ZR vans and so on, the buses, the minibuses, they operate slightly different from the transport board, where you're supposed to have um, an, an a situation where you should be able to predict the situation. Um, of course, part of the next slide looks at the issue of what really, can we have the next slide? What happened beyond 2015? And in 2018, you saw that, as it was reported by then, there were serious concerns, and it ended up with a significant number of vehicles continuing to address the shortage, and in the estimates at the time, the additional routes. So remember, we moved from a pilot to an expanded situation. But of course, after 2018, we had a new administration, and they would have introduced some changes. So could we have the next slide, please? Um, so in 2020, and this was taken from an article which the transport board itself put out, and it kind of gave you a sense of what was happening. Now, recognize that in the public transport system, the government buses, let me put it that way, three categories of persons usually rode on the bus for free. Pensioners. In some years, it was beyond us. There was a period between which pensioners could ride, or in other situations, it was at any time. School children um, would have in around 2009 or so, there was an introduction of free rides for children. They weren't paid bus fares before. Children sometimes paid a reduced bus fare. And police officers, so students in uniform, members of the police service, as it used to be Royal Barbados Police Force, now the Barbados Police Service, they are able to drive on the buses for free. And as the one of the managers at the Barbados Transport Board would have pointed out, it really was the same program, renamed the Transport Augmentation Program, but it was again intended to supplement the program. And as I said here, on this 2020, 25th of September, they had over 70 participating vehicles, according to that. And there was a plan to include 33 new electric buses. I'm not sure if that full complement has been received. I suspect not. And so at the bottom was something related to, and I left that there, commuters and in that notice are reminded that they wear masks. Now, I left that there because in addition to asking commuters to wear masks, there was a period around this time that there was another restriction or requirement, and that was that the numbers of persons who traveled on the bus had to, they had to reduce the numbers that the carrying capacity, because of the need to socially distance, remember during COVID. And that had implications for the revenue earned by these private operators. Recognize that the private operators operate on a strictly, well, it is expected that it is a strictly for profit situation. And so that was the challenge. So obviously after that, and because of that, you would see that there were certain kinds of issues. Now, in looking at the program, if I could have the next slide, what we saw was a situation where the well, this is just describing it again. According to government, it was in, as they said, in the past 2 years. But as I mentioned before, the program had existed prior to that, maybe about 5 years in total. But under the new name, it basically remained the same. And as it said, in the past 2 years, the Transport Board instituted the program to allow some privately owned buses to work under its guidance and management. And of course, if it is under the guidance and management, the expectation was that these vehicles would operate as provide. So the private people would be expected to follow the behaviors and the, the practices not associated with the government buses. Could I have the next slide, please? Um, Now, this was the way in which the revenues generated are recorded, and I will speak to that from the point of view of an operator in a minute. As it said, the operator is supposed to take note of the commuters on their way bills. I should slow down. I'm conscious of the time that I have allocated, and I don't want to mess up your schedule. But so they had an operating system. Let me describe it as such, where there were devices put on the bus which would assist in the recording of passengers. And in doing so, they were able then to submit invoices. So, but I want to flag something about the invoices. There were two ways in which the operators generated their income. That is, the private entities participating in the TAP program. Regular commuters paying bus fare, that money went into the operators participating in the program. It went into their pockets, but they had to be invoiced for. They would send invoices to government to pay for those people who normally would ride quote unquote free, at least free, on entering the vehicle. So if pensioners rode the bus, the elderly, same thing, school children and police, they then had to capture those numbers, and the system was supposed to do that. They would then refund, and the expectation was that there was a specified period within which the individuals would get paid, get their refunds. Now, I noticed somebody put at the bottom there that some of these concessionaires or these operators basically did not behave as they expected. I think I saw something about, as I said, I witnessed my father have to miss his appointment at the polyclinic because two tap vans passed him. And how I interpret that was he was a pensioner.
Yeah.
And as far as they were concerned, even though they were going to be paid for Mr. John Brown, he wasn't giving them cash. And that runs counter to what should have been the arrangement, you see. And that was part of the challenge that we had. So in terms of this, you had a situation where people were expecting to be able to access the transportation, whether it was the traditional transport board bus or one of the participants in this scheme. Similarly, what Dale is saying here, that he had to wait, there's these long waits trying to get the bus. Now, if we go to the next slide, recognize that there's an established process for getting refunds, and there's supposed to be an established process for paying and the timelines. Now, I put this up here, and this really speaks to what we heard just now, because part of the challenge with the scheme, so you can look at it from the perspective of the person delivering the service, and you can look at it from the person's, the commuters receiving the service. While I spoke to an operator, and I will share his situation in a minute, what he experienced, he's no longer in the program. There was reason in recent times, last year, for example, and this came from Look News, where as it says here, the Transport Board rebukes unlawful actions by TAP operators. Commuters, because I extracted this from this article, commuters encouraged to know their rights. And here were some of the problems. Operators of the TAP program were actually charging fares to the elderly and to school children. Now, you know that if you're going to get into trouble for getting to school late, you really didn't want to have that. There might be punishments meted out. Now, of course, anybody would come and say that they can't get the bus as an excuse, and I suppose the principal or whoever senior teacher, knowing that some children may fudge the whole thing, may decide, look, we can't accept that as an excuse ongoing. So a child might decide, rather than miss this bus, I'll pay, when he or she in fact was not to pay. And then the same thing with the elderly, you have to get to the polyclinic. And so these were examples. And of course, people talked about the way people drive sometimes, that they forget that they're supposed to be in the system, and acting and behaving as you would expect the other transport board to do. Um, and then, of course, there was a situation where people were charging additional money for what people were carrying and so on. So in other words, there was a deviation away from the practice, the practices that people were expected to follow. And looking at all of this, and before I share some of the conversation I had, I have a slide which summarizes the next slide. I think it would be, which summarizes exactly. And so, based on the conversation I had, and based on looking at it, there were three things that came to mind here, which I think people um, that need to look at. And in fact, I will suggest that the TAP program is really a case study of a situation that many small operators, small entrepreneurs, small business people who either contract with government or contract with larger entities often face. Now, the terms and conditions of the contract were raised by this gentleman, the payment experiences, and then the requirements that he had to face exiting the program. Basically, these people who joined the scheme were um, persons who operated, let's say, in the port. They had, let's say, because there were coaches, whether you had a 20 something or 30 seater, you operated, alongside hotels or down in the cruise facility, transporting and taking tourists around, etc. And so they normally operated with a permit. And one of the conditions of this arrangement with TAP was that they had to freeze the permit. Now, the permits were frozen as part of the agreement. And at the time that this gentleman participated in the program, a permit was $3,000 per year.
Oh,
Um, so you had so that was $3,000 a year. In addition to that, and if this information that he shared with me is not correct, because I wasn't able to find it, I say to the transport board and to Ms. Holder, who happened to have been a former student of mine, I believe, in her university days. She could contact me and correct me. Um, but from what he's saying to me, that they were required to pay an annual fee of $12,000 a year. But there was a concession where they did not have to pay, an arrangement where they did not have to pay the $12,000 up front, but they would pay that on a monthly basis of $1,000. Now, remember that if you started to participate in this program around 2019 or late 2018, and then you went into 2019, into 2020. Remember that I said that part of the challenge that some people faced was the fact that there were fewer riders, because some people were working from home, etc. And then, in addition to that, even if there were riders, any particular vehicle could only carry a percentage, maybe two-thirds of the regular carrying capacity. The other thing that they were required to do was that they had to pay a 12.5% of their gross revenue. And that people felt was fairly significant. Now, I wouldn't try to confuse our audience, but what I would say that um, anybody that who has a way with numbers, and does a little accounting or calculation. It's really an arithmetic kind of calculation, but to say it, somebody might say 12.5% leaves the person with 12, and it's 97.5. That's 98 and 10, 88.5. Sorry, 88.5%. So in other words, for every dollar that you made gross, you had to give the government $78.50. But remember that 78 and 10, no, 88, no, 88, right? 88 and 10 is, yeah,
Yeah.
that 80, 87 and a half. That's right, 87, 88. Yes, 87 and a half. My mental arithmetic, my primary school teachers would be upset with me that I'm forgetting how to do it. But out of that, it
7.
sounds good. But out of that remaining amount, they have to cover all their costs. Remember, they have to help pay for this 12,000. I'm not saying that the government isn't entitled. I'm just doing some of the calculations. So they have to then pay that annual fee. They have to service the vehicle, gasoline, and all the maintenance parts, etc. So, in essence, when you start to look at it, you might find that depending on what the government's expenses are for, I mean, the operator's expenses are for a given month, the government might end up getting more of the money than them. And so, they may have some concerns. But I am less concerned with the fact that they're paying 12% and they're paying an upfront $12,000 participation a fee per year, and more concerned with the payment experiences that the operators had. And for this gentleman who ended up having a vehicle repossessed and so on, I mean, I'm not saying that this alone was his problem, but having gone into the program, as he said, one of the problems that they had was the late payments. And if you think of a a small business person who has cash flow challenges,
Mm-hmm.
he or she then is pretty much operating, I call it hand to mouth on a shoestring and so on. And they can't, they're budgeting and their expectations are, I will get my payment this month, and 6 weeks later it hasn't happened. Because if I remember correctly, he was saying, and I like to make my notes so I don't misrepresent anything. As he said here, that sometimes he would have received payments up to 3 months later than, you know, and so that obviously would have created some problems. So the refunds, even though the refunds were not, um, or ideally would not be the biggest part of their intake from terms of passenger revenue, especially as he was saying that participating during that COVID period was extremely difficult, and that was compounded by the fact that they weren't paying. So actually, I asked him about the challenge with the lockdowns. Remember, he said that on average they were probably carrying about 50% to 60 maximum. So you could see how their revenues would drop. Now, having said that, so this person was saying, look, we were challenged to get those payments. We were faced, in addition to that, with significantly reduced paying passengers on the vehicle, and late payments and all of that really impacted very heavily on their cash flow and their ability to meet, maintain the vehicles as they would want, etc. Now, what I found interesting, remember I said, and I'm coming close to the end in terms of what I've gotten here. What I found interesting was the fact that he indicated. So I said to him, how was it when you exited? And he said that was part of the challenge. Remember, as I indicated, your BT, which is the other that permit to operate
Yeah.
in within the tourism sector. Let me put it like that. Was frozen. You were paying the government a $12,000 fee for the year, annual fee, and you were paying 12.5% of your gross taking. So if you freeze my my BT permit to participate in the TAP program,
Mm-hmm.
I can't lease it out to anybody. I can't use it because my vehicle is in the system. And so that what became a problem was that at the exit, he was asked to pay um, $10,000 to get back the frozen permit. Um, so they you broke out that is nine or $10,000. You broke out that into 3,000 to renew the permit. So in other words, you're going into a new year, you pay, and I could understand that. But having frozen it, he was then required to pay as if he were paying a new permit retroactively. So in essence, I'm in the program for 2 years. My permit is frozen for two, and I have to pay for those 2 years plus the to
Why?
get what is considered a new permit. Do you follow that? Ask me a question. You look confused.
Man, see, I'm saying this is crazy because I don't even think they consider that they also have to pay insurance.
Right. Well, and see, this was part of the
There's
challenge
no-
because and so I said, but I can understand that they will charge you. Well, you have to renew your permit as being frozen. So if my car has not been on the road, and they tell you, because normally this is what happens, if I remember correctly, if your car were parked for a period of time and the license had expired, you would have to pay for that expired. Let's say it was off the road for a year, you would then
Mhm.
have to pay for 2 years. But I am participating in a program where I pay an alternate, and in fact, the amount paid to government is more than the permit, the annual permit. So you're paying 10,000 to participate. Now, as I said, if those numbers are wrong, so it really the whole concern that he had was that in addition to having a challenge, with generating revenue, having to await payments, and also having to pay government two chunks of his earnings, so to speak. And as I said, I don't think you should participate for free. But the question really is there any was there any analysis done? And in fact, one of the things that you would see if you read about this, during that period, that at one point in time in 20, I think it was 2022, there was a there some of the participants in the scheme, some of the drivers stopped operating. They were concerned that they needed to get some relief, and I think at some point there might have been a bit of relief from the 12.5%. But overall, what it really says to me is that such a program, at the end of the day, and I suppose the entities that represent because these people belong to an umbrella body. I'm trying the drivers, these
Yes.
vehicles belong to an umbrella body. And my question really and truly is, when we allocate these fees, when we decide on a percentage, do their representatives or the owners of the vehicles themselves do any calculations to say, okay, look, this makes sense because I was paying $3,000. You asked me to pay 10,
Hmm.
but I'm making more money because I'm participating not on what I would call an occasional, but I have a route, I have a schedule, and theoretically, I carry more passengers. But depending on what you do as in the tourism sector, you may have commitments which might give you more or less revenue. And so, in looking at that, what I really was looking,
Maxine, not
yes.
to cut you off,
No, you go ahead. It helps
I
me.
just want to let you know you got 5 more minutes to
Oh,
present.
okay.
There's
Right.
a lot of
Okay.
information for us to take, and I know a lot of people have questions, including myself. So I
Hmm.
don't want your time to run out before people can get a chance to
Okay.
ask.
Well, what I would say is this: that this to me is an example. For me, is a case study that brings out the teacher in me
Mhm.
of how small businesses have to do proper analysis before they enter to ventures, because I see this as a business venture, right?
Definitely.
In the sense that you have to make a decision: do I participate in this program, or do I look to create some other kind of avenues for generating revenue? And a quick parallel that comes to mind, and I would stop, are the people who operate boutiques and small stores, etc. And when you Bridgetown, for example, and I mean I did that in the um that would have been in the mid 80s, in mid 80s to early 90s, being involved in retail children's clothing and whatever. And part of the problem that a lot of people have are the operating costs. So you go and you decide, I'm going to open a boutique and I'm going to spend X amount of money in rent. I mean, I like this location, but nobody sits down to tell you, or you do not understand necessarily that if I'm going to pay a landlord $4,000 in rent for a certain space, you have to ask yourself, if these are my this if this is a fixed cost that I have, how much do I have to sell to just cover that before you even start to think about covering, getting money to replace your stock, to make money for yourself, to pay an assistant, and so on. And I think that what in listening to the gentleman, if he had sat with me before he did this program, he came to me when he was having challenges. I would have said to him, have you sat down to do any calculations based on the terms and conditions and based on your knowledge of the cost? Because if you're operating your vehicle in this kind of fashion, you can anticipate the wear and tear would be more, and so on. But I think I'll stop there because it's something I just think sometimes we need to help people to get a sense of what some of the questions they must ask before they get into something. Um, Tironi is saying the amount of taxes we in Barbados are paying, we should have good service. And that is true. We
Definitely.
are, I am actually going through a project with some folks, and I am amazed at the cost involved in getting a product to market in terms, and that in fact is for me, because it's something that I've been documenting as I go along, because some of the things you're kind of, and as I said to the people with whom I'm assisting, I said, these are things that you really have to sit down and get your hands and your minds around. Otherwise, you may end up with some serious challenges. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Maxine. That was an excellent presentation. But what I'm getting from what you said, I think that there should have been an opportunity for some of these PSV drivers to sit down and discuss with somebody, like a person who will be able to teach them or educate them about the real cost attached to this before they actually sign the official papers. Because if they really did the calculation, they would have known from the beginning that this is not a venture that they could afford based on the costs. Do
Well,
you
for,
think
yeah,
that
for
is
some of
something
them, they probably
to
could.
implement?
You're correct. You're correct. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, do you think that is something the government can implement? Because I know sometimes
Well,
when you go into some
before
program,
yeah, well, true.
mm-hmm,
I think so because for example, the government. I've heard some government programs talking about financial literacy, but financial literacy is required at several levels. It's required for us as consumers. It's required for us as entrepreneurs. I remember in my days of teaching marketing, I was reminiscing about that only yesterday with somebody, and I told him it was such a long time ago, but when I started, but I remember I would always get some pushback from my students when I started to put numbers in there, and somebody saying, but this is marketing. What we have to do this is like accounting. And I said, but hold on.
no,
One thing that you have to remember is that every marketing decision has financial implications. So in
mm-hmm,
essence, if you want to start them, and we went through marketing campaigns to show them that, okay, you're going to spend all this money, but are you making back enough on sales? Was it worth the while to engage in that particular kind of activity? So I think part of the, and it is a worry because a lot of people go into business expecting that you're going to make a lot of money. And in fact, I was kind of rushing into a little bit, but that 12.5% on the
yeah,
gross, when you come down to the point of looking at your net position, you
mm-hmm,
may find, as I say, that the government might have ended up, because they were getting those two payments, getting more than some people got, because it depended on the routes you had, the number of commuters, what had changed with COVID, because this guy was participating around that time. Tironi, your teaching days are still actually, I mean, you see, Shaquani, well, you're a young entrepreneur, and so, but you would have would understand the importance of it. And I have worked with young
definitely.
people and youth entrepreneurs for a long time. If without sounding like blowing much, but why not blow your trumpet? every program that we've had in youth entrepreneurship here in Barbados, I've been a part of the startup. I don't make a lot of noise about that, but that's the case. But and it worries me. And this is something that I have always said. And don't fool yourself. It's not only small business operators. I will tell you who ends up often losing a lot of money if they don't understand. Professionals who invest in business, such as engineers and doctors, who may have money, and people invite them to participate in business, and if they don't study it carefully, I mean, there's one thing to take risk and know you're taking risk, because
Definitely.
risk business is about risk. But there's one thing to depend on somebody to make decisions on your behalf and not
Fully
have
understand the risk
proper
attached to it.
information. This N is N and N is complaint. There's no way you should be operating a pub with broken seats and bits. But that is quite true. I mean, that can be injurious. I mean, a rusty piece of metal cutting you or digging into your leg may cause tetanus. And so this is the thing. So really and truly, what in a case like this, whether it's a public service, if it's a government-owned bus, that's the way, because they're all doing public service. If it is a government-owned bus or a private operator's vehicle, maintenance and the maintaining of a minimum standard in terms of the state of the vehicle is also important.
Yes, definitely. Maxie, I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to cut you off.
I know the drill.
But no, but I think tonight was an excellent start to this conversation, because that bit that you just talked about, where they talk about the broken seats, because how are people going to repair seats if they don't, if they're barely making enough to cover their costs and the costs going to the government? So that's something that we also need to take into consideration. And I think that you're going to have to come back and do a part two for this, because I don't think that we have all the questions answered in the chat. There's so many questions where people want to know, like, how in terms of the public aspect, because we spoke about from PSV drivers. How about
Mhm.
the passengers who have to endure this process, and because they're not able to make the adequate income, how it's really impacting the public and public transportation.
Now, well, I will finally say two things. One, the problem there is that when you think about it, and they shouldn't do it, but a guy might decide, you know what? Why am I going to pick up Maxine McCLEAN? Because I'm eligible to ride on the bus for free, by the way. Why should I pick her up when, in fact, I need to get some cash in my pocket? Now that breaks the contract, but it probably is symbolic of an issue, or symptomatic of an issue. And what I would say is, what I would do sometime perhaps is to talk about beyond this, to look at the whole challenge or set of challenges that small business operators have when it comes to making financial decisions, because I think this is something that often breaks a lot of people. They have these great notions that you go into business and you make these huge net profits, when in fact the reality is far from that. And if they don't make the right decision, it's okay if you have money and you lose some, but if you are somebody who had to borrow to invest, or to use your savings to invest and so on, then the impact, is something. So there's some critical decisions that people need. The other thing is, you also need to know when to get out, because if you can't throw good money after bad, so to speak, as they say, but because you may be bleeding, and losing money. But if you continue, probably maybe digging yourself deeper and deeper into a hole. But I'm happy we got a chance to talk, and I'm gonna observe as you continue this evening. You may I am not sure I will stick around for a while. But you may see me mute, come
No
up, I'll be
problem.
muted, but my screen, I might disappear off the screen for a while. But I'm
No
listening and
problem.
following.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, Maxie. I can tell you a lot of people enjoyed your presentation. We are hoping for a part two, and we're looking forward to it. So thank you very much for being here. And now I'm going to put you in the back, but
That's
bring for our next presenter. So, if you missed when I announced what was on the program for tonight, our next segment, we're going to hear from the acting president of the Democratic Labour Party, Andre Worrell, with exciting news of the annual conference and the way forward for the party.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Andre. Can you give us give the public a brief description of you, Andre Worrell, before you go into the conference celebrations and what to expect from the party?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Shaquani, for this invitation to be on the Marcia Week show. And good evening to those well, I can almost say thousands of persons watching online. A little bit about me, Andre. Well, I am a very easygoing person. I have been a member of the Democratic Labour Party from 2008. I've served for 5 years as the president of the Young Democrats. And I've also, since probably about 2013, served as the assistant secretary of the party. And then after 2018, rose up through the ranks of from fourth vice president to first vice president at one point, and now I'm actually acting as the president of the party. What I like to do, I love the beach. I'm a Star Trek person, so I guess that to me that is all about discipline. That is all about chain of command. That's all about order. And I'm the sort of person that will be eagerly awaiting Elon Musk's Starship Test 5, which should hopefully be by the end of this month or early next month. That's the sort of things that I like to do.
Thank you very much. So now you can go straight into your presentation because I know the public really wants to know what is going on with the DLP, what is expected to happen at conference, and really what is the plan going forward.
Okay. Well, I would want to say to the members of the public that we, regrettably, we've been through a difficult period, but we are a political party which has been around for 69 years. And with every organization, every institution, you do have some challenges. But thankfully, we do have a constitution which allows us to navigate those challenges. So right now, unfortunately, over the last couple of days, the party came to the decision to expel the former president, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, and former General Secretary, Dr. Steve Blackett. So obviously, when you take a decision like that with persons who were at the top of the organization, it is not going to be an easy process. So to just allow the party to go through this stage and to know that we have been trying our best to keep the matters internal, and we want to start this inward look and start looking outward so that the Democratic Labour Party, because we are hearing the agitation of the people. People are not happy with the way things are in this country right now. They've voted into a government which promised a lot, but up to this date have delivered very little, and many Barbadians are not satisfied. They're not happy, and then they're not happy with the Democratic Labour Party because it seems as though we were not doing our job to be the political party which normally agitates for the people of Barbados. But that is what we would want to change from this weekend as we go into our 69th annual conference. And I want to encourage all Democratic Labour Party supporters. The conference starts on Friday the 23rd to come out, come support the Democratic Labour Party and help us to do our job to represent the people of Barbados and to agitate for the people of Barbados. I want us to start looking outward and shaping and retooling the Democratic Labour Party that we can meet the needs and the concerns of Barbadians and raise issues on their behalf. Supporting our political leader, Mr. Ralph Thorne, in Parliament, that as he gets on a platform and speaks, he is actually speaking with the voice of Barbadians who have been crying out to him, who have been going out to him and, giving their concerns with healthcare in Barbados, problems at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I heard that you were dealing with transportation before. There are many Barbadians right now who are still singing that popular chorus, where's the bus to town, at the bus stops nowadays, because for all that has been done with transportation in Barbados. Buying the electric buses is one thing, having the tap persons on. A lot of people are still not satisfied with the bus service in Barbados, and also with the garbage collection. And we just feel a sense of hopelessness in this country, especially for young people, in terms of job opportunities. So this is where we have the opportunity at annual conference to actually discuss some of these things. We will normally start the conference with a gala on Friday nights because you want the members to come. And I think it's going to be particularly important this year. Come, embrace each other, socialize, unite, put down everything, all the division and stuff like that. Have a drink with each other, socialize, unite, and then say to yourself, we are coming the next day, the first business day of the conference, to look after the business of the Democratic Labour Party and the people of Barbados. So on the second day of the conference, which would be the Saturday morning, it would also be the start of voting. This year, we are only voting for 6 positions on our General Council, persons who are voted onto the General Council from annual conference, 6 persons. So we have considered, we have a conference committee which composed of a youthful chairperson in the form of Quincy Jones, and we also have mature persons as well in the form of Ainsley Ben, who is the vice chair, along with a number of other members, a wide cross-section of members from the party. So one of the things that they have thought to introduce this year would be digital voting, which is not a bad thing because as you go through the US, you see that the Democratic primaries, or all of those things are done by digital voting. When we were in COVID, we wish that we had it, that we could have done it then. A lot of credit unions use the digital voting process for their board members and stuff like that. So seeing that we are only doing for 6 positions on the General Council, we will test that out this year to see how it is done. So that's the only voting that will be done for conference. That's on Saturday and on Sunday. And then we will have the reports from the executive and general council, the report from the treasurer, a report from the associate branches, such as the Young Democrats and Women's League. And once we get through all of those reports, just recapping what they have done, what they have achieved in their year and their plans going forward, we will then turn our attention to resolutions from the conference floor. Now, all of the branches have been encouraged during their AGMs to consider resolutions. And so far, some of the resolutions which I have seen are quite encouraging because despite the turmoil which has been going on within the party, some of our branches still took the time to deal with resolutions which pertain to things in Barbados. Many Barbadians would not know that through our annual conference, this is the type of party the DLP is. Forward-thinking policies such as the formation of the National Insurance Scheme came as a resolution to the DLP's annual conference many years ago in the 1960s, and then it was made into government policy by the cabinet, and now we have a national insurance scheme in Barbados, which is probably one of the best pension and social security schemes in Barbados or throughout the world. So those are legislations, and also legislation for the protection of women. These things came from the floor of annual conference. So we want to continue in that tradition. There are many things which we need to look at. Is there something that could be done from legislatively or in terms of better utilizing the agencies of government to help control prices in Barbados and inflation, those kind of things. We want to talk about the energy bill because many Barbadians, have you realized that our price for gas has been stuck at one amount since September 2023. We're nearly at September 2024, paying $4.22 for gas. Is that real? Is that unusual? Do we like it? Are we feeling it in our pockets? And is it contributing to the high cost of living that we are experiencing, and also the decline in the tourism numbers as well? obviously crime and the
Mhm.
gun shootings and stuff like that. And more importantly, how can we as a party engage and create ideas that would better utilize our young people? You also have sporting as well. We are still without a national stadium. When the Democratic Labour Party left government, the plans were there and already approved by the Chinese government to rebuild the national stadium. That was halted by this current administration, and they have not yet been able to get it off the ground. So how are we contributing to sport development in as a country? And do we need to look at it different instead of looking at sports and what you give to the athletes as just a handout, but more so look at it as sports as a career, which should be there upon the list of approved jobs in Barbados and things of that nature, especially when you think about the discussion which was going on, what should we give to Sade? We should be giving Sade a full salary, that she should be able to take care of all of her needs, not just her athletic needs, but the needs of her family as well. So that after her athletic career is finished, she would not have to be around fronting, but can possibly then transition from an athlete. And if she decides that she wants to get into sports administration or training and come back and assist other athletes in Barbados or throughout the rest of the region. So we are hoping to have that kind of forward-thinking discussion at our annual conference. On the Saturday, you'll have the at the end of the Saturday you'll have an address by myself, the acting president of the party. Sunday morning, we'll return for a church service, devotions as usual, and we expect to hear an inspiring word from the minister who will bring the sermon. And also, if he chastises as well, you have to know when you're going wrong, and somebody tell you where you have gone wrong, and take the chastisement as a big organization and as an adult as well, and move forward with the expectation that you will do better. We'll continue with resolutions. This year, we'll also be having roundtable discussions on specific areas so that these will more focus on policy development, policies that the party can introduce, because we are doing this because we want to be the next government in Barbados. So when we become the next government in Barbados, Barbadians will not be able to say you don't have any ideas, because we develop our ideas at our annual conference, then into our manifesto, and then we implement them as government policy when you take over the government and you get into cabinet and you take policy and legislation back to parliament. And then on the Sunday, we will end the Sunday with an address by our political leader, the Honorable Ralph Thorne. So that is just a quick run through of what annual conference is like, and I am looking forward to it and encouraging all the LP supporters, don't care which side you were on before, this is the time for us to unite and move forward.
Definitely. Andre, you have a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm going to try to run through a couple of them. And then I have a question myself for you. Okay,
No
let's go.
problem.
A person, let me see, do I have it here? Someone wanted to know about in terms of voting, like when you get at the headquarters, is there a signing segment? Do you have to come with your ID? How would that work? Because they were hearing some rumors that there was a checking at the gate. Is that true, or is like voting as normal?
Okay, normally before our annual conference, when you come, because voting is reserved for those persons who are financial. So normally when you arrive at George Street for the annual conference, the veranda in front of the auditorium is where we would normally do our registration for members. So you need to identify who are members, because there are aspects of the conference that are only open to members. It's a members conference. So you have to be a member of the Democratic Labour Party to be there. So you will go to the registration desk. This year we will have two, one in front of the auditorium, and then we would utilize the hut by the main gate. And persons will be there with the members list, and you will check you off. If the person is financial, you'll be given a wristband and whatever package we have, and you proceed to the auditorium. So all of this is done within the confines of the Democratic Labour Party. If the person is not financial and they wish to pay, you'll be escorted to the office where you can make that payment. You'll be then given the wristband that you can go in and participate, because the wristband will identify voters on the floor. Because obviously you have resolutions, and and to pass the resolutions, they have to be voted on. So those wristbands would help us to identify who is eligible to vote at the conference. But all members of the party are eligible to speak at the conference and contribute. In terms of the voting for the 6 persons, now
Yes.
you'll then be taken to a room where, again, your name and everything will be checked off, just as
That's normal.
voting for a normal election. So you will go into the room, they announce your name, cross your name off the list. And this year, instead of giving you paper to tick off the persons that you wish to vote for, you'll be given a pad or a computer, and you're allowed to go at the computer and vote for the individuals, the 6 persons that you wish to vote for. Obviously, we will publish a list of all the persons who have been nominated so that the members would know who they are. Canvassing is not allowed on the day of voting, and you will then vote electronically for the 6 persons of your choice. And then with that, the information will be available immediately at the end of the close of polling on Sunday evening at 3 o'clock.
Another question that I saw popped up, people wanted to know how can they join the party?
Well, you can join the party. We have membership forms available at headquarters, George Street. It is also available online at the party's website, dlpbb.org, or you just search for Democratic Labour Party, our website. There you can download the application form, you fill it out. You will need a proposer who is a member of the party, and the membership fee is just a simple $36 for the entire year. You bring that into headquarters. All membership applications must be approved by the Executive Council, and once they're approved by the Executive Council, you will be notified of your membership and join to the branch that you either the constituency that you live in, work in, or you would prefer to be associated with.
Yes. So, for people wondering, you can join the party, but you wouldn't be able to participate in this election process. But the next elections, you would be able to participate if accepted into the party after the approvals. So, you can still come and observe, but you wouldn't be able to vote for anything because you would not be approved as yet. I do have a question for you, Andrew. So don't go anywhere as yet. A lot. I know this question is in a lot of people's minds. Can you explain to the public what exactly are the complaints or charges brought against the two leaders of, well, the two former leaders of the party? Because the public really does not understand in the whole how exactly the charges were brought and what makes them legitimate, because we're seeing a lot of fake news online saying that they're not real charges, this is not real, they're still in charge of the party. So let's help clear the public on what the actual, well, not necessarily the details of the process, but explain to them the complaints, the charges, and how that process worked.
Okay. Just to explain to persons, or the majority of the charges that we are dealing with originated out of the meeting, which was dubbed a members forum, which was called hastily by the General Secretary for the 21st of April. And every Barbadian would know that on that Sunday evening, it seemed as though there was cat piss and pepper at George Street. The whole thing cat spraddle, where the members came to a meeting. Many of us did not know what the meeting was about. Even myself, as a fourth vice president, I did ask the question, what is this meeting about? And we were never given full details. It was a members forum. At that meeting, and this is just, instead of reading out all of the charges, which could be a bit boring, at that meeting, the former General Secretary, Mr. Steve Blackett, made some allegations against the political leader. Many of these things would, with the intention of impugning his character and reputation, and also to the extent of saying that he was a liar. And now, Mr. Thorne is not just the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party, but he also holds a constitutional position, that of the opposition leader of Barbados. And that is something that people must understand. One of the three important constitutional positions in Barbados: Prime Minister, Attorney General, and opposition leader. Now, many of the members of the party were not pleased with this behavior, and then the uproar that would have occurred. This could have all have been managed better. And now the party has two organs: the General Council, the Executive Council. Although you may be the General Secretary of the party, you any decisions that you report on the party must come with the approval of the Executive Council and the General Council. If he wanted to make those accusations in his own personal name, he was free to go anywhere and do that. But from the time that he made those accusations in the name of the General Secretary of the Democratic Labour Party and purported to be the feeling and of the Democratic Labour Party, that became a problem, because the members of the party never agreed to it, never knew about it. So that was a breach of the party's rules and the Constitution. Now, there were a number of allegations because some things occurred before, because there was a General Council meeting on the 4th of April, where it was revealed to the members of the General Council that the General Secretary was not being truthful about information that he supplied to the General Council. This is generally a breach of the party, because we operate based on a system of trust, and that is one of the straws that really brought the camel's back, when we recognized that if we had not called for a particular document, we would have left the meeting with the based on what the General Secretary wanted us to believe, but which was not necessarily true, because the document showed that what he was saying was not necessarily truthful. So based on all of these things, the members of the party decided to lodge a complaint with the General Council, and then the natural thing to happen would be for that complaint to go to the disciplinary committee, for the disciplinary committee, which would act like the judiciary, to hear the matter and determine if the complaints were valid. So the disciplinary committee, we suspended the General Secretary because we felt that it was necessary to do that. His suspension was an administrative suspension to allow for the investigation to take place. And many Barbadians could tell that based on the action of the General Secretary while he was suspended, that if we had not done that and he had remained in office, now this matter would have been squashed and never dealt with. So the suspension proved to be necessary after the fact, based on the behavior of the former General Secretary between the 9th of May and up to Sunday, even though he has been expelled, and still behaving as though he is an officer and authority within the Democratic Labour Party. So during the suspension, the disciplinary committee wrote to the General Secretary, and it will deal with both of them, the General Secretary and the acting president and the former president, and invited them to the hearings of the disciplinary committee. The first meeting they did not turn up to, they did not respond. And we made sure that they got notice, just as you would be summoned. A summons will be sent out to you by the court. We did it the same way as the Democratic Labour Party, to make sure that they got the notice and they knew about it. They never respected the disciplinary committee by even replying or responding or turning up. They had the opportunity that they could have responded with a written response to the charges, or they could have come to the meeting represented by an attorney at law. All of those things were possible. Then the matter was taken to court, and the court gave an injunction which affirmed the suspension and place, and also that the status quo, which would be that Pedro Shepherd would continue to act as general secretary and I would continue to act as the president. Now, during that process, the court had also asked that we do nothing, well, more or less, that saying that the matter was being heard in court, you know, the disciplinary committee decided, well, look, we will not have the meetings during that period. And after the case was discontinued, the general counsel instructed the disciplinary committee to call the hearings and deal with the matter. So this next hearing was on the 6th of August. Again, they never turned up. They never sent in a written response, nothing. They did not acknowledge the committee at any point at all. So the committee heard the complaints from the two persons who lodged the complaints with the general counsel. Those persons provided evidence and they also provided witnesses as well. And after hearing the complaints and the witness testimony, the disciplinary committee would have deliberated and they came back with a verdict in both counts that the two persons, what they had done is necessary for action from the disciplinary committee, and based on the charges, they recommended expulsion. The report was done for the general counsel. All of this time, we made a special effort within the party not to disclose the charges, not even to members. I specifically remember telling the members of the disciplinary committee that we are going to photocopy the charges and give them to you. We will not even email them or give you a soft copy because we don't want it circulating all over Barbados. And the members of the disciplinary committee, as far as I know, they upheld their responsibility and they never allowed persons. So it is only this week, because on Saturday, after we had made a decision on Thursday, it was necessary to inform the members of the party, those members who were outside of the general council, what the charges are. And we decided that we will do that by a video which was released on Saturday evening or Saturday or Sunday morning, and to inform the members of the charges. So that is the first time that the charges against the former president and general secretary would have entered the public domain by the Democratic Labour Party. We know that they were in the paper at some point in time, but it is not through the Democratic Labour Party. It is through the parties who were charged. So,
Andre, I want to thank you very much for that explanation, because I know a lot of the public, they were confused. Even some members may have been a bit confused as well. And that explanation was extremely clear. But my next question for you is, what is the plan for going forward in terms of healing the party so that we can go there and better represent the public?
yeah, we do recognize that there was a lot of miscommunication within the party. So a lot of people would have heard information because they were in closed chats where only one person could put in information, and they were not necessarily verifying this information with other authorities within the party. All persons need to do is to consult the membership book to understand how the party operates and the rules of the party. But going forward, we would ask for the members of the party to accept the decision of the general council. There's annual conference coming up. There will be an opportunity there's annual conference coming up, and we would want to hear from members of their views on these issues as well. But at the end of the day, we need the members of the party to recognize that this internal squabbling is not helping the Democratic Labour Party. We need to unite, work together, work with our political leader. Now, after 2018, we have a seat in the House of Assembly through opposition leader Ralph Thorne. Utilize that seat and the voice that it gives with the two persons in the Senate and help to develop a robust Democratic Labour Party opposition to this government. Our fight is not with our members. Our fight should always be with the opposition, with the Barbados Labour Party and the policies that they are bringing, which we believe are not in the interest of the people of Barbados. We don't need to fight, but we need to agitate to find that voice that we had before, which agitated for the people of Barbados when we recognized that they were depressed, downtrodden, or felt as though that they were not making it in their country and needed a voice of hope. We need to be that voice again so that we can make sure that our Barbadians get their fair share of the economic pie in this country. Many people have a sense of hopelessness when it comes to jobs. You see the rumblings going on between the unions and the worker and the companies in terms of salary and payment and whether or not person should be on contract or whether they are self-employed and you need to pay NAS for them. All of these things need agitation and a voice. And that is where the Democratic Labour Party can come in. The educational system is in shambles. For more than 2 years, this country has been, no more than 2 years, this country has been in limbo with regard to whether or not we will have a common entrance or not. And at the same time, the primary school system in Barbados is suffering, and the secondary school system, because we as a country need to start allocating more resources in the primary school system to deal with the problems before they reach the secondary school. If we introduce the right interventions from primary school, I don't think it would matter if we have common entrance or not, because the children would be getting an adequate education and performing. And we need to identify ways of developing the skills. Look, we came out of the Olympics and we were only able to muster 4 athletes for Barbados. And that is something that worries me. And I am concerned about that. So how do we develop a plan? And it's not a 4-year plan that we need, because as far as I see it, we have an excellent sports program when it comes to NAPSAT. Then you go to BSAT. But then after that, the children just disappear. So why haven't we been able to build on that? We normally get quite a few athletes into scholarships, but why haven't we been able to build on that? So those are things that we need to start addressing as a country and as the Democratic Labour Party, and start worrying about, I'm not even going to call names, but start worrying about the people within the party, but start worrying about how best as a party we can meet the objectives of the Democratic Labour Party to help to develop the people of Barbados and to help to harness the resources within Barbados for the better of the country and for the better of the people. And that is what Mr. Ralph Thorne wants to do. We just need to give him the support, and I am certain that we will rally a movement in Barbados that we can possibly win the next government and save Barbadians from the tyranny of the Barbados Labour Party.
Thank you
That is to
very
be
much.
progress.
Thank you very much, Andre. Like, you went into so much detail about so many things that you want to tackle, not only as a person, but as a party going forward, and so many things you think that we need to focus on. There's a question here asking, how would you address young people's lack of confidence in the party? But before you answer, I want to say something. I am a young person in the party and I have not lost confidence. And what I will say to a lot of the young people out there doubting themselves, doubting the party, doubting the ability of what we can do is that you have to know your own strength and what you're willing to do. Nothing worth having is going to be easy. And if you want it, if you know that this is the party for you, if you know and you're seeing the things that we're doing, because in the mix of the confusion, we're still doing things. So imagine we're able to handle confusion and still do our role to the government. We can still do it. That means that you have to decide how dedicated you want to be. I always tell people I joined the party right after 2018 election, right after the Democratic Labour Party lost. And people always ask me why. And I tell them I joined because I was one of those persons at home crawling with the TV saying what they could do better. That was me. I was at home, sitting in front of my TV, looking at the votes coming in, talking to my family, trying to decide what they could have done better, what we didn't see them do, what we wish them that they had done. And I realized that I was no better than no one else because I didn't do anything. And the next day after they lost, I went and joined the party. And not only me, most of my family members joined the party that same day too, because we recognized that we all had a part to play. Whether it be big or small, we all had a role. And that's how I want young people to say it. Yes, it is hard. Yes, you will get backlash. Yes, people will come and attack you in the comments. They will attack you on your personal pages. Oh gosh, if they find your number, they will attack you there as well. But you're not alone. It is not easy. And if you cannot handle people coming after you in the comments, how do you expect to run a government? Always put that in mind because we're expected to lead, we're expected to show by living by an example. That means that we need to be prepared to deal with the difficult situations. We will be able to navigate going forward because we have lived through adversity. We have dealt with the hard decisions. We decided as a party that we had an issue. We followed our rules and we fixed the problem. And that is how you have to do it in life and society going forward with the Barbadian public. We see where the issues are, we address them, and we get them fixed. Because if we can't do that, we're not ready to govern. And because we were able to make that decision, we made a hard choice that some people do not agree with, but it was for the betterment of the party. When people want to be dictators, basically you cannot allow that to happen, because then you have the same problem where they're not listening to the people of Barbados. Remember that they're supposed to be listening to their members to speak on behalf of our decisions, and by not doing that, they were doing the same thing the government was doing to us. They're not listening to our queries, our questions, our concerns, and that is the biggest problem that we had. Andre, I'm sorry for just jumping in there, but I really wanted to mention that I am a member of the party. I am young. And yes, I face adversity every single day. Yes, there's issues. Yes, people, all know people are commenting in the comments. And that is okay. We need to decide what we are willing to accept and what we're willing to allow. It's okay that people do not agree with us, and that is
Okay.
okay. Not every single person would agree with us. But what I will say is that it gives us the opportunity to defend it and then the opportunity to defend it. Andrew, there's a question. What time does the gala start?
I believe the gala starts at about 6, but that information will be posted and shared. But I wanted to get back to that question because I did see it on the screen, and I had said if you did not ask me that question, I was planning to answer it.
I got
Yes, in terms of young people, now this is the ideal time for the young people to infiltrate a party like the Democratic Labour Party and make your voice heard. Because this is the sort of person that I am in terms of youth development. I don't just want to bring a solution to you. I want to hear from you what is the problem, and I want to hear from you what works best for you, a young person. Because I recognize that at my age, I may not see the world the same way as a 18-year-old. And quite frankly, 18-year-olds, 25-year-old have a different mindset to me, someone who is over 40. So in terms of the confidence, this is the ideal time for young people to come to the Democratic Labour Party. And we intend to have sessions where we speak to, we want to get our young Democrats meeting and interacting with young people. And I would say to you that we already have some of those young people, because this weekend alone, I was inspired by a conversation that I had with some young people at party headquarters. And the person spoke to me and told me about their being innovative and creative and all of those things and the plans that they would like to see. And this is a young person who is also the chairperson of a branch, a very young person at 25. So we actually have young people who are working within the party. This is a good time for those university students, those communities college students, even sixth formers or young working people in 25 to 30. If you have an interest in politics, if you have an interest in helping others, this is the time for you to give of your service to a party such as the Democratic Labour Party. We can benefit from your expertise, your knowledge, and because we cannot necessarily craft a vision from Barbados unless we interact with you and know exactly what it is that you want. Because it does, I said this at a forum. We always say that we need to create jobs for our young people, but it is not about creating jobs. You have to create jobs that they want and jobs around the parameters in which they're willing to work in. So these are the conversations that we need to have with our young people. You cannot have a solution to crime unless you engage with the young people to see how it impacts on their lives, why it is happening. So this is the time. You can't fix the education system in Barbados unless we work with the young people, hear their views on it and stuff like that. We work to develop things such as the National Youth Parliament. I am disappointed that the National Youth Parliament does not have the same level of prominence which it had when I was in the Senate, and the president of the Senate, Carrie-Ann Eiffel, held a responsibility for developing the National Youth Parliament. And it gave it that sense of prominence where they could meet within Parliament for their debates, and they were carried on Parliament TV, they were carried on news. Now we don't even hear and remember the National Youth Parliament. We speak about promoting and encouraging youth, but we are not acting on it. You don't see them. You don't know what they're thinking because they're not given that sense of prominence. I know that they had a discussion on crime in Barbados, and those are things that should have been highlighted by the media. And you can't fault the media for not highlighting it because it was not said from a place of prominence. If it was carried from the floor of Parliament as they used to have their debates from either the Senate or within the House of Assembly, the media would have picked up on it and ran with it. And so instead of every day telling Barbadians how many young people were killed and shot, we need to find avenues that the young people who are doing things in Barbados, who are creative, who are innovative, who are out there helping others, who are within the churches, all of those things, we need to highlight those people so that our young people will recognize there are other opportunities and avenues available in Barbados, and it is not just a life on the block. Not saying that there's a problem with the block, because there are some blocks in Barbados which have been quite productive in terms of setting up food stalls and vending and those kind of things. Those are the things that you need to see happening. So these are the things that we need to engage our young people with. So I would say to any young person, now is the ideal time for you to come to a party like the Democratic Labour Party. Let your voice be heard, let your energies be noticed. And, if we are wrong and you think that we are doing something that we ought not to be doing, put us in our place too.
No, I would just saying call us out. Like, don't be afraid to speak out. And that is one of the most important things. We cannot always be right, and call us out when you think that we're straying away from the important messages, because we're not gonna say that we know everything, but we're hoping that the public and the opposition here tonight keep us on task, keep us focused on what we're supposed to be doing, and help us stay focused on what is the pressing issues happening in Barbados and what you think we're missing, because we may not be able to see everything, and that is why there is power in numbers. And with every single person watching here, every single person in Barbados, you have a voice and you have an opportunity to help us and help yourself by getting on board with some of the programs that we're going to be rolling out, some of the initiatives, some of the informative sessions and consultations that we're going to be doing, because we want to involve the public with every aspect at every level to make sure that we are on task of what we're supposed to be doing as the opposition party.
And if I could interject with one thing, SHAQUANI, just from my past. Remember I said that I was the president of the Young Democrats for about 5 years. And I remember the first year that I took up the presidency, David Thompson invited the executive of the Young Democrats to Ilara Court a Saturday morning for a talk. Now, we didn't just go to him for him to tell us what he wanted us to do. We went with a plan of action, saying these are the things that we want to do within the Young Democrats. These are the activities we plan to involve ourselves in. And we were able to tick off all of those plans. Now, that is what young people need to do. Don't come to the Democratic Labour Party for us to give you direction. You come with a proposal, with a plan. I'm certain the political leader will sit down and have time with you and help you to work it out. I, as the acting president, will meet with you to discuss it. I'm certain the General Secretary, Pedro Shepherd, who is also a teacher, will be glad to engage you on it, as well as the other persons within the party. So this is the ideal time to come with a plan. This is a project, this is a program that I think will be beneficial to the youth of Barbados. How can you help us make this a reality? And this is something that the party can unite around and develop for this country and for the young people of this country.
Andre, thank you very, very much. I am so glad that you were able to come on tonight because so many questions were out there and you answered so many of them. And I think you did an excellent presentation about what is happening at our conference, what to expect from the party going forward, and really how we plan to incorporate young people in the party and currently what the current young people in the party are doing, because I think the public had a kind of confused perception of what really was happening, and we were really able to explain and elaborate on it. And hopefully, this clears up so much more. And we have some questions in the comments, so I'm just going to go through a couple of the questions to see if anybody had directed anything to you. So, a person has said, I'm a young person and I want to join the party. I want to help and I want to immerse myself in confusion. Or they're asking, do I want to immerse myself in confusion? Well, I'm going to tackle this if you don't mind. Come. Because it looks confused on the outside, that doesn't mean it's actually confused. What I will say is that when I first joined the party, I wanted to help people. That is why I went to the party. I wanted to help people. I was accustomed to helping people. And I found when I came to the party, people opened their arms and they helped me. I didn't know everything. And honestly, I probably knew nothing when I got there. But the reality is that so many people, there's such a wide range of ages, you get help along the way. I can tell you so many projects that we did. I remember working on Andre with the water project that we did in St. John. We recognized that a lot of people in St. John did not have water. We started a water drive, and that was one of the first projects we really had to go in the field. We had to raise donations. People donated to us. And when we gave out those cases of water and that whole project, we didn't ask people who they voted for. That didn't come up because it did not matter, because the only thing that was on our minds was people didn't have water and we had water to give out. We also, I remember that was really a passion project for us, and that was not the only area that we had tackled. And I'm saying that to say that there's an opportunity for lots of people to help people. And because you're not sure that your idea is possible, that doesn't mean there are people, like Maxine said, there are a lot of people they're willing to teach you how to get these projects off the ground and how to keep them sustainable and continuous.
Right. And correct, it's also an opportunity for you to learn and gain valuable experience. Another activity for me. Many years ago, you would have heard of Astor B. Watts within the Democratic Labour Party. Astor B. Watts would normally have a Father's Day luncheon at the party. And, you know, after I joined the party and stuff like that, he invited me to come and sit on his committee to plan this luncheon. And I would always be grateful for that opportunity and experience, because I saw the level of detail that Astor went through in terms of planning for that luncheon. He knew down to the last rice grain how much rice he needed, how much flour he needed, and then he had a list of people who to approach. So what I would call it, it teaches, so if you are in activities like this at NGO, you need to know how to be a professional beggar in terms of seeking donations and stuff like that. So you learn that level of organization. You know how to approach people, how to network with people to get things done. So you gain valuable experience along the way. So it is always a two-way street. You give but you also learn a lot, and you get to interconnect with a number of people that if you stay in your house, you will never get to meet some of the people. So it is also good exposure for young people as well, because many of them, when they apply for jobs, they have no experience. But you can gain valuable experience from working in an organization, because we do marketing within the political party, we do communications within the political party, we have a need for accountants within the political party. Um, all of these things, you get an opportunity at public speaking. Wouldn't these things look good on your resume? And would it help to distinguish you for a job where you need expertise in marketing, communication, accounting skills? All of these things you get to learn organizing and managing projects. You'll be amazed at some of the projects that you would manage by working within the Young Democrat, organizing a retreat for the entire Young Democrats, where you actually go and book out a hotel or guest houses and take care of everybody and not just to have fun, but to have engage in meaningful discussion. So you get to learn a lot, and you get a lot of experience as well.
Andre, there's a question here. People want you to remind them how to join the party before you leave.
Alrighty then, and I hope to see some of these applications coming through. First, easy step, you can head to George Street. The LP headquarters, we're open from about 9 each day till about 4:30 safely. You can say that. The persons in there to take the applications. You can visit the party's website at dlpbb.org, and there's an application on the website that you can download and fill out and bring back to George Street. If you know any of the former candidates that ran in the last election, engage with them. They can help to join you up. Or if you know any of the branch secretaries or chairmen from the DLP branches within your constituency, you can go about it that way as well. You can message me on Facebook, I'm that open, or on Instagram, and I will be willing to help you to get that application to join the DLP. And I will make sure that we embrace you and welcome you, and you know that we all benefit from the experience.
Thank you very much for explaining that process again to us, Andre. It was extremely wonderful for you to come on the show tonight. And I know that I am not the only one who is pleased to have you on. We appreciate all the information that you're giving us. We are thankful that you could come and explain everything that was going on, because I can tell you what I've been seeing in the media was super confusing, because I can't even believe that this is what they were saying. So I know that for the public, it had to be extremely confusing as well. I am glad that we were able to explain to people what the process was like, what conference is like, and what joining the party would be like. Because I can say from the time I joined the party, what I have gained. I know that when I do presentations at school, they're always like, how are you able to do this so well? And I told them, practice. I know members of the party who taught me how to write speeches and proposals, members who taught me how to do public speaking, how to prepare for large crowds. So it wasn't only just, as you're saying, a public crawl, nothing to give you, they're taking from young people. But I was able to gain so much and also bring so much to the table. And one of the things I always appreciated that I was given opportunities at every level to sit on general council, to sit at executive. And it wasn't that you're young, you're not able to contribute. Because you're young, that doesn't mean anything. Raise your hand like everybody else. Once you're acknowledged, say what you have to say, and then it could be debated on the floor. I feel that by joining the party, I was given a platform to learn, encourage, and give them additional information that I think can help Barbadians and the younger generation. I just want to say to the public, because I know a lot of people really do think that we are not ready, but we are ready, and this was a big step to becoming more ready for the next election, getting our house in order, going forward with the plans. And as you can see, a lot of people in chat clearly wants to know how to join the party, so they're ready to come and commit to the process of going forward. We are extremely happy and we're hoping to have you back again because we want to be updated on what is going on with the DLP. Because if this is the opposition and we are the opposition wants an opportunity to submit to the party to say where some of the points that we think you can focus on, where, because really and truly this is as much of the opposition as the party is the opposition. So if we give the opposition a platform to submit concerns and queries and suggestions, I think that that in whole will make the party a lot stronger because we are keeping in touch with the people of Barbados, and I think they will appreciate that so much going forward. Andre, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to say to the opposition?
Well, I would just like to say if we could answer the question which is on the screen, yes, we could probably give an account to that in terms of the central bank's report because many Barbadians are not necessarily feeling the positivity which was in the central bank report. And the reason for that is there seems to be either there's a lie or there's not equity in terms of the distribution of wealth in the country. And we also have to take into consideration the report. We are dealing with a situation where Barbados experienced a significant loss during COVID. We are now at the stage where our tourism numbers are finally reaching pre-COVID levels. So obviously we are behind where we ought to be in terms of growth levels. So if we are now reaching pre-COVID levels, obviously that growth is not enough to deal with the inflation in the country, which is at now. So it's almost like saying, well, the inflation increased by 15%, whatever the case might be, and you have now reached a stage of growth that would contribute to at least 4 or 5% of that inflation. So we have a lot more growth to do. It shows that the economy is really not performing as robustly as it ought to. So yes, the DLP is ready to discuss these things. You have a number of economists who are not necessarily happy with the way how the figures are reported, and we need to give a more accurate assessment of the performance of the country. Look, we have Sandals sending home or laying off people at this time. Never heard about that before. But we hear places like Grenada and St. Lucia experiencing robust growth. So we're growing in one section, but we're taking the money out and the other end because no one is talking about the impact of oil, what we pay for gas in this country, and how it's affecting our spending power. These are the things that we need to discuss.
Okay, Andre, somebody else has a question. It's on the screen. Can anyone assist the party, or these opportunities are only for young people?
Of course, anyone can assist the party. If you are young, if you are middle aged, if you are retired, come to the Democratic Labour Party. We need to hear from all of you. Barbados is not just made up of one demographic because we can't just deal with young people alone. We have a large aging population. So we can't put things in place for them that they're not interested in either. So we need to hear from everybody within the country. We need to hear from the working class people, the persons between say 30 to 45, and then the older demographic from 50 to the to 70, and even the ones older than that, because we have a lot of centenarians in Barbados as well. So because we also need the experience of the older persons as well to help to guide us. That is what we need as a country. We can't do everything off of new blood. We need the experience of the older persons as well to guide us. So anyone can assist. We welcome everybody.
Thank you very much again, Andre. We do appreciate you coming on. And I am so glad that you were able to come on because as you can see, there's so many questions we didn't get to tackle all of them. That is why we have to get you coming back at another segment because people want to know the party's position on some of these topics here. Like somebody asked about what is the ideas for agriculture, and I think that's an excellent question that they put up to you because I know that you were very focused on agriculture at one point. So we got a little bit of time left, but we got about 5 minutes. So I'm gonna give you some time to speak on that.
Well, we definitely need to do more in our agriculture side. And then another thing that we can blame the Barbados Labour Party for, because at one stage, Barbados was self-sufficient in the poultry industry to the extent that we should have been looking at exporting poultry. Now we are in a situation where it seems as though the merchants want to take over and we are importing poultry. I had always said that instead of the government providing the subsidies to Roberts for the feed, the subsidies should have gone to the farmers to give them cash flow. We need to take agriculture seriously in Barbados because if you recognize from the pandemic and also from shipping, we have no control over the prices of the commodities coming in. We have good products here in Barbados, so we need to do more. Yes, we know that the climate is difficult, but the government has also said that they have borrowed money for climate resilience. So where is that money going? The farmers in Wakefield are now getting lines for water. All of these things should have been in place ever since. So you had them over there suffering for 2 years, and you're now giving them water. You can't do farming without access to water. So I think that we need to relook agriculture in Barbados instead of giving the subsidies to the big companies, give the subsidies to the farmers so that the farmers would have cash flow, that they can pay their workers, that they can buy the supplies, and will be able to keep the cost of the poultry, the pork, and other items down. I miss my pudding and sauce on Saturdays because sometimes the sweet potato is far too expensive for the steamed pudding. All of these are things, but you need water, access to water. So what are we really doing? This government has borrowed a lot of money, but they have not invested in the critical areas for development in Barbados. That is the desalination plant, so that the groundwater could be made available more readily to the farmers at a lower price. Those are things that can be done. That would significantly boost agricultural production in Barbados. Financing for the farmers, all of those things. So yes, we can have a discussion any day on agriculture. It is something that I'm very passionate about because agriculture also produces other cottage industries. We have a number of people in Barbados who built their homes all for selling pudding and sauce on Saturdays. If you can't get the cheap pork, if you can't get the reasonable sweet potatoes, you are impacting on their livelihood. The fishermen, no, the $500 that which was offered to the fishermen, we should use this as an opportunity to upgrade our fishing industry so that the persons on long liners can go out with better functioning boats so that the young people who work on these boats who are out for 2 and 3 weeks can still communicate with their family back home, and at night when they're not fishing, use satellite internet to watch television on their phone. How many young people you think would want to be on a boat in a situation like that where they're completely cut off for the rest of the world for 2 3 weeks? So we need to bring our fishing industry up to date. They're talking about the blue economy, but all of these things are just buzzwords. They're not doing anything to significantly invest and allow the people in Barbados to build companies and grow from investment in these things. These are the things that needs to be done. Not just buzzwords. We need action.
Andre, thank you very, very much for indulging us in that question. And I want to thank you for coming on because I know that with conference this week, it couldn't be easy, but I know that we are grateful for you attending tonight. And I want to thank you for coming here. And I know the opposition is thankful that you were able to present. And I want to wish you a good night. And I hope that you can still stay and observe the rest of the presentations because we still have a lot of good information coming in store. And thank you very much, Andrew, for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, and I will be watching the rest of it. Thank you. Have a
Okay.
good night.
Bye bye. Okay, guys. Andre's presentation was excellent, and I just want to say again, like, thank you. And he was able to share so much information with us that we can take home, utilize, and prepare for the next time he's here. So on our third segment tonight, we will be discussing the international activists speak on Barbados cybercrime bill. So we have some international activists here tonight speaking on the cybercrime bill. I'm going to bring them in one at a time so that I can read their bios. So first, I have Dr. Nathan Waguzi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, please correct me. Okay, that's great. An environmental and social justice organizer based in Washington, D.C. He has been supporting the Saba Saba movement and protests in Kenya. He advocates for change both in Kenya and in the Black diaspora. We also have with us Jean Saintville. I hope I'm also pronouncing your name correctly. Haitian, Ottawa based author, radio host, social justice activist, and featured politician analyst on international media. I want to thank both of you for joining us tonight, and we're extremely excited to hear how you are going to tackle the cybercrime bill in Barbados. So I'm not sure who's going to go first.
I'll take a stab at it.
Oh, okay, no problem. That's great.
Thank you for having me on the show again. It's really good to see you.
Definitely.
Very nice to meet you. No, so I came across this cybercrime law when I visited Barbados as ostensibly as a tourist, and I happened to meet several people who mentioned that Barbados was slowly sliding into very undemocratic and autocratic behavior from your government. And this was in the backdrop, of course, of the ongoing Saba Saba or Gen Z uprising that started in Kenya and has been finding root in other parts of Africa against the same kinds of things. Passage of draconian and oppressive laws. In the case of Kenya, that was the Finance Act, which passed very punitive taxes on working class and poor Kenyans. So it obviously piqued my interest because your prime minister and our president are very similar in the sense that they project a very progressive image to the world on the international stage, but are very autocratic and undemocratic at home, which is very typical of these types of leaders. So the cybercrime bill is not unusual. It's not unusual for governments or regimes who are looking to particularly silence the youth. You have to be very specific about who this cybercrime bill is targeted against. The previous speaker, I didn't get his name, but he was talking about an aging population. Now, older, what we call baby boomers, people who are in their 60s, 70s, maybe late 50s, those people are not active social media users. They're still very much rooted in traditional media forms like watching TV, reading the newspaper. Millennials and millennials are those who were born in the 80s into the early 90s, and Gen Zs who are younger individuals who are in their 30s, what we call the youth, who are now between 18 and 35. Those two populations are very tech savvy in the sense that they use social media. They're actively using phone-based apps to communicate and disseminate information really, really rapidly in a way that can also effect social change, like what we saw in Kenya, because a lot of the organizing was being on phones. Now, governments who do not want that kind of democratic space and democratic progress will start to pass legislation like the cybercrime bill to curtail that freedom of expression, curtail that freedom of association and speech. I also get very concerned when I see such bills passing or bills being presented before parliaments, not just in Barbados, but in other parts of the world. We know similar laws have been passed in places like Nigeria, Senegal, Palestine, Libya, Egypt. So bad laws are like cancer. They creep around. You know, they show an example to aspiring despots that you can actually do this and get away with it. So if that's in Barbados, you can expect that it's going to spread like cancer once it starts to take root, and that's why it's really important that this kind of legislation is nipped in its bud before it becomes infectious and before it starts to corrupt not just the hard-won democratic space in the Caribbean, but in the Black diaspora, but also in the global South. So it concerns me when I see such legislation, and I hope we'll spend the next couple of minutes discussing its demerits and why Barbadians not only should be concerned for themselves, but why they should oppose it and oppose it as hard as they can. Let me finish my introductory comments by saying this. We have an old story back at home that talks about a merchant who was traveling across a desert, and in the evening he camped out with his camel, and the camel sat outside. Obviously, he settled himself and put himself in a tent. Then it got windy and cold, so the camel asked him if he put his nose inside the tent. And the merchant said yes, so the camel put the nose inside the tent. And as the evening progressed, he asked if he could put his ears, his head, then his neck, then his back. But by the end of the evening, the merchant was sleeping outside in the cold, and the camel was sleeping inside. In other words, when you let these kinds of legislation take root, they are a prelude to other things, right? They're a precursor to other, even more oppressive legislation. So it has to be fought and has to be nipped at the bud now, when it's in its infancy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Um, Jean, can you do your opening statement now before I get into some questions and you could elaborate more on both of your points?
Yes. Well, thank you very much for having me,
Sure.
Shakwani, and I say greetings to Brother Nathan Waz-
One,
Waguzi.
one good.
Wanguzi.
Yes.
Apologies for not pronouncing properly. That's our reality. We've been separated from each other for too long, and we have to struggle to regain our languages. I am grateful for Marsha Weeks and team for not only inviting me to this program, but also introducing me to that cybercrime bill of which I was not aware. And while perusing the document, I must say I find it very disturbing. And if you look at the end, some of the examples that they've provided were in countries where they have had similar laws, and they've used them in examples they gave for Nigeria, for Libya, for Egypt. And you can see, and I absolutely agree with uh, Dr. Wanguzi's assessment that this does not only concern Barbados, and it's only the beginning. And, watching how the youth, the Gen Z in Kenya, have used, their telephones to organize, to try to undo some of the advances of white supremacy in Kenya, and knowing what's cooking up in the Caribbean, it's clear why they're doing that. Perhaps it might be slightly different in Barbados because of the scale and the size of the country, but in Haiti, which is my native country of which I'm more familiar, the traditional media is controlled by the oligarchs. Basically, the 15 white mafia families that are running the fake economy of the country on behalf of multinationals that are established in the US, in Europe, etc. Okay, so that's the fake economy we have in Haiti. Okay, they control the media. They are owners of the largest TV stations, the newspapers, etc. So if you are to defend democracy or anything like that, and you were to rely on the traditional newspapers, these are always aligned with whatever the US or France or Canada desire. In fact, sometimes you wonder whether the news is coming out of Haiti or whether it is Ottawa that tells the media in Haiti what to print about what's happening in Haiti. Okay.
Mm.
So that's the neo-colonial system. And when you see them starting to put those muscles, to stop people, like basically saying that if you criticize essentially the government, okay, they can bring you to jail. And I was looking at the jail terms here, like
It's
you take
insane.
a young person like 18, 19 in this, from those demonstrations, and then that means you've taken all their young years. Okay. And so that means now white supremacy doesn't need to do what they did to Nelson Mandela anymore. They don't, because that's what they do. They take away our youth. Okay. They murder our good leaders when they are just coming up. And that's why in all my speeches, I always come back to the fact that Patrice Lumumba did not live to be 36. They killed him at 35. Thomas Sankara at 37. Okay. Fred Hampton in the United States at 22. Okay. And like I mentioned, they stole the 27 vibrant years of Nelson Mandela, Wolilala Mandela from him and released, a trembling elder from whom they knew they could take a lot of concessions before they allow Africans to take over Azania, that they rebaptized South Africa. So it's disturbing, like I wrote in my little introduction to the program, because I was celebrating when Barbados finally, threw away the shackles of British monarchy. I don't understand how in 2024 we can be having a family of leeches in London living off the backs of indigenous people that they have stolen everything they have all over the planet. So, and when I was watching Mia Motley on TV giving speeches, just like Dr. Nathan Wanguzi said, yeah, she was saying all the right things. Yes, how can they expect people in the Caribbean to be fighting climate change when we did not cause the pollution? Okay, we don't have the resources because the Europeans stole everything from us. So she was saying all of these good things, and then she comes to power, and what we're seeing is that they're building up a military or a repressive apparatus very similar to what you have in Kenya. And
Mm.
it's not a coincidence that they're taking people in arms in Kenya and they're bringing them in the Caribbean and they're testing the model in Haiti. And now Mia Motley is cozy with the Americans, with the Canadians and the French, and they're discussing sending policemen from Barbados, for crying out loud. I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of being in Barbados, but I flew over Barbados. I see, like, this is like a day you go across Barbados. So how could someone could even conceive of small countries like Barbados, Jamaica, sending troops to Haiti? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What they're doing is fueling black on black crimes in the Caribbean. Okay? So by not having enough commonalities among ourselves, okay, crimes are going to be committed.
Mhm.
Okay? And then the white criminals who finance the whole thing will hide in Washington, in Ottawa, in Paris, and they will watch the film because it's a movie to them. Just like on the slave plantation, it's seldom the white man who carried the whip. Okay, they forced our ancestors to beat their own mothers. And of course, if they're committing such crimes, Mia Mottley needs to protect herself. And so she puts in this cyber crime bill so that this sister here and all brothers and sisters, I have many friends who are from Barbados, okay, they will not accept that. They will rise against it. So it's a preemptive strike on their part to silence us even before they start the killing.
I want to say thank you, both of you, so for very intriguing opening statements, because I don't think people understand how serious this bill is, because it was just swooped in an evening without even bringing awareness to the public. I think a lot of the public does not understand exactly how it really impacts them. So, either of you, actually both of you, I want you to pick out a section, or which is the most important section you think we need to focus on. But on the screen, we have one here, malicious communication, because I know that is something that you spoke about. And when you think about what that actually means, that could be any of us. It can be considered that what we post can be considered as malicious communication. Like, how do you define malicious communication from regular communication? Who does the determining that your communication is malicious? Because that is the real question, I think. Who are the people judging us? Because we do not understand how dangerous it is to let something like this pass. Because if we're not sure who is judging us, we're not sure what exactly we should put out. That means maybe we might not be able to put out anything. So you both can answer, I guess, one at a time. Tell us what you think we need to prepare for and how we should tackle this.
Yeah. So one of the things that is very symptomatic of oppressive legislation anywhere in the world, whether we're talking about like slave codes or discriminatory laws, anywhere in the world, or laws that are targeted against specific demographics or are undemocratic or unconstitutional, one of the most common ways in which they use language is through ambiguity. So you kind of draw a really broad brush around what an offense is. You know, in the past, my brother here was talking about um, enslavement of Africans or black people in the Caribbean and in other parts of Latin and North America. And you know, they had broad definitions of what an offense looked like, right? So you'd be told if you're found loitering, or if you're found not engaging in productive activities, you could be captured and put to work. So you know that gives a very broad definition of what an offense becomes. And this cybercrime bill is no different. Typical, as I said, to oppressive legislation. I've had time to go through the entire piece of legislation, and it gives very vague definitions of what the offenses are. The second part that you have to be cognizant of this type of legislation is it also equally makes very extreme uh, punishment for a very vague set of offenses. So, you know, if you have to look at, for instance, legislation that criminalizes use of banned substances, like, I don't know, cocaine, marijuana, it's clear that if you're found in possession of a particular type of substance, then that is an offense. If it's legislation about violence or sexual offenses, committing certain acts equals to offenses. Now, you pointed out a very good example there, of where they're talking about malicious communication. And that has two problems. So first, it's a broad sweep. It's broad, it's non-specific, and then it's subjective to the person receiving it. So they're basically trying to legislate people's emotions. That if you make me feel bad, if you make me feel offended, if you make me feel uh, vexed in some way or another, if you make me feel annoyed, then I can go and justify that as an offense. And that's really not only really bad legislation, it's dangerous legislation because then it leaves it to interpretation by whoever the person who is offended um, is. And by and large, this legislation is being written by your parliament, being driven by your prime minister, and that leaves it gives her broad sets of powers to take very very extreme and disproportionate punishment against citizens who are either criticizing her, who don't agree with her, who don't like her. Now, I have something to tell Mia Motley, and I'm sure her agents or other individuals who know or who have contact towards her, to her, will listen to this show. Tell Mia Motley that if she cannot handle criticism, she has no business being in power. You cannot be a leader in any democratic country in this day and if you can't take criticism. That's the whole idea of democracy. That's the whole idea of a free society. Now, Barbados is not even a large country. I was looking at it in terms of like scale back at home in Kenya and other parts of the continent. Barbados is the equivalent of a constituency in my country. Small, 280 something thousand people. If you can't take criticisms from your own people, you have no business being in power. Whoever hears this that has a direct line to Mia Motley, tell them that Dr. Wangusi said that if she cannot take criticism from her own people, whom she's supposed to lead, whom she's supposed to guide, who she's supposed to protect, she has no business being in power. It really gets to me because, how does an individual, because obviously, this is not being driven by individual legislators. We know this is coming directly from the highest office in the land. Otherwise, it wouldn't go that far. And then on the same token, on the international stage, you have this pretentious persona of a democratic and progressive society. Yet at home, you're oppressing your people because you don't want them to criticize your government. You don't want them to criticize that you're not meeting your obligation to provide food and water and jobs and opportunities to them. If that's the case, then she should just step down instead of subjecting her people to an oppressive system. And then she should also be very cautious because power is fleeting. Power is fleeting. And the same sword that she sharpened today will be used against her when her opposers get to power. Power is very fleeting. She might be the prime minister today, tomorrow she'll be a common citizen. And what's then going to happen is that someone is going to use that legislation against her because she's also very outspoken. So Barbadians should be very careful and protect democracy in their country. But Mia Motley, if you can't take criticism from your people, just step down.
Yeah. On my end, I'm curious whether there's been any kind of public consultation before arriving at this legislation. I mean, has there been people in the country saying that this is an important, a critical issue, therefore we need a bill for it? Or is this something that's coming top down?
We haven't had any consultation as yet. We're waiting for consultation. We're asking for consultation because the truth is that this is a very serious bill with very serious implications if you, I guess, step out of what is considered to be the norms for them or what they want you to say, because we're in the time period of influencers. And I'm assuming that if this bill is in place, the influencers will be the ones setting the tone for what the government would want. And if you're not setting that same tone and following it, you may be considered to be doing something malicious.
Mhm.
And my young self may find myself behind bars for the next how many years for
Hmm.
something that I didn't agree to, I didn't have a say in. And what we really want to know is, how would you suggest we handle it as the opposition of Barbados? Like,
Hmm.
what do we tell the government?
Well, honestly, I must say that it reads to me like, you know, something that's being tested on Bajans. Okay, I mean, if you haven't had major crises in your country where people are saying that, the cyberspace is causing trouble to our youth, etc., like, a social discussion that led to, legislators saying that this is something important for us, then it sounds more like one of those other things where, some guy in Washington and in Paris sits down and say, let's test this. This is a small population, uh, and their leader is a woman, so it's very difficult to criticize Mia Mottley because the optics are all in her favor. She has a speech that makes her sound like she is anti-imperialist, etc. So that means they don't see the white men and women who are really running the show. Because I'm telling you, when you look at the reality of the Caribbean, what we are living is not that much different than what our ancestors lived. There are more black faces in the big house, but in reality, those who control the land and who need to control us through the way we communicate,
Mm.
many of them are not even in Barbados or in Haiti, in Jamaica. So when I look at this, um, I'm thinking about what kind of obedience and or submission that they're trying to enforce in Barbados. What kind of laws? Um, because the other concern I have when you ask about, what should the opposition do, is this is going to be discussed in your society. You have organizations, you have structures, and these, I would beg you not to take them for granted. Okay? I'll just give you a simple example, right? Because someone just wrote, you could be jailed for telling the truth. I think it's Sophia who typed that a minute ago. That's exactly it. And the thought that came to my mind immediately was Coretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King. Very few people realize that she took the US government to court and won in 1999, proving that her husband was killed by agencies of the United States government. Now, if you bring it to present day, if I go online, as I often say, that it is the US government that killed the former puppet president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, well, I have done more than causing annoyance by this statement. But
Definitely.
I am convinced that I have made a truth statement. The fact is, the United States government is so powerful today. If you go read the latest documents, okay, they're judging three U.S. government agents who were implicated in the assassination of Jovenel Moise. And the U.S. justice system has a rule that there are certain truths that cannot come out of that judgment, that cannot even be uttered by the lawyers in that courtroom. So they're coming out and saying that we killed the man. But you cannot say that. So if you had a kind of law like that where I'm speaking from, well, they could just come and arrest me because I have caused more than an annoyance by stating the truth that the United States government has killed the puppet that they had put in place in Haiti, just like they have killed many others in the past. We saw how they killed Muammar Gaddafi, and Hillary Clinton was laughing about the crime that she had committed, okay, knowing that she was going to get away with it, and she did get away with it up to this day. So the other question is what to do. I, when I look at the document and the fact that a group of people are trying to get the Inter-American, I guess, is it Commission on Human Rights of the OAS to look at this. I'm not hopeful. Okay. The Organization of American States and its agencies work for the US government. Look at the election that just took place in Venezuela. No one among these people who are questioning the outcome of the election of Venezuela seriously think that Maduro did not win the election. Everybody knows why Maduro cannot be accepted as president of Venezuela. It's not because of confusion about the outcome of the election. It's because this is not the president that the United States want. So if you're thinking that the OAS is going to protect the people of Barbados, sorry, this is not the experience that people of Cuba has had. It's not the experience that the people of Haiti have had. It certainly is not the experience that the people of Venezuela have had. No, we absolutely, I understand that there must be people who take this route,
Mm-hmm.
but it cannot be the only route that we're taking. These people create laws, they don't follow them.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Black Code, which they had created to organize how they were going to enslave our ancestors, they did not follow. According to the Black Code, they were supposed to change the clothing X numbers of times a year. It's still barbaric, but they never followed that. So there's a problem with African people thinking that we must live our lives according to the rules established by our enemies, rules that they don't follow. Look what's happening in Palestine today. So I don't think we have any obligation to pretend,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think we have the luxury of pretending that there are rules that are established that are, universal rules of the United Nations of the OA. Those things are always skewed towards the powers that are currently running the place. I'll give you a final example. Our brother is from Kenya. You know quite well that the legal system in Kenya declared that sending mercenaries from Kenya to Haiti is illegal. Well, aren't they in Haiti today? There are 400 of them in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
And worse, as soon as they got there, they realized that they had lied to them because the United States has sent a whole kinds of weapons to Haiti, claiming that it was for the multinational mission to fight gangs. They haven't been fighting gangs. They've been guarding the U.S. embassy in Haiti. Okay, and all of this equipment is U.S. property. And there are many people who worry that what the U.S. is really doing is building its own military bases in the Caribbean, and they're doing that for their own wars with Russia and China that has nothing to do with the well-being of Black people. Certainly not those of us in Haiti.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I think about when I hear legislation, government position, is to go back and think about like who is driving this? Why has the regime today decided that they're putting this cybercrime bill out? That's really, really important to know because it's really important not just who the messenger is, but actually where the message is. And I think that's a question for Barbadians themselves to answer. I can tell you what I observed. As I was saying earlier, you know, there must be a larger plan. One of the things I observed in Barbados very, very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
me being there, was that you have this paramilitary police force called the task force. And those are hallmarks of undemocratic behavior, where you have a like a paramilitary or military force or a police force who are not subject to um, normal police conduct, for search and seizure. I observed them stopping a young black male uh,
Mhm.
in a mall, searching him simply on suspicion. Um, and then I heard about the cybercrime bill. You can see, you know, this kind of society, an oppressive society, is in place. Uh, so someone somewhere wants to redesign Barbadian society to fit a certain goal. I think only Barbadians can answer that question. The Kenyan case, we have a policy that when the government uh, comes up with any oppressive, unacceptable, or damaging legislation,
Mhm.
you fight it where you can, everywhere you can, and with everything you have. Because if something like that takes root, then the things you're most afraid of
Mhm.
will become your norm, will become your norm. So today, Barbadians in their homes, comfortably, posting things online, tweeting, but they're afraid to go out to the streets to protest against this law. If the cyber bill passes, from what I'm reading, where you make someone annoyed, you can get a fine of
$70,000.
70,000 Canadian dollars or 7 years in prison just for them getting, slightly irritated. Then those liberties you take for granted. Well, so that's is what drives, for instance, the protests in Kenya, where we're saying if we don't go out and fight for our rights, we are dead anyway, because someone is going to starve. My mother is going to lack medical care. I'm not going to be able to educate my children. I'm not going to be able to afford. So why wait until tomorrow when the legislation has passed to then become a victim, right? If the cybercrime bill was passed in Kenya, I kid you, and I guarantee you would be out on the streets in full force, because we know once the pass, we are done for it. So the time to change now. The second question is, how do you challenge? As I said,
Mhm.
when you have an amorphous enemy like this, where we are not very sure, and I've not had anyone clearly articulate to me who
Mhm.
is driving this legislation. Maybe it's Mia Motley because she's just insecure. Maybe it's her, or maybe, as our brother is saying, it's a larger globalization uh, uh, force or architecture in play, where someone somewhere, or some groups of people somewhere, want to change the fundamental organization of Caribbean countries so that they can recolonize them. Maybe that's what it is. So, before we launch into what to do about it, Barbadians need to ask that question, and they need to answer that question relatively quickly, because the last time we talked about this bill had not passed, right? Someone needs to quickly figure out who is, because your legislators don't seem to be able to give you answers. Your prime minister doesn't also seem to be able to give you. And then lastly, let me just finish by saying this. Um, how do you challenge legislation? You challenge it in the courts on the basis of reality. You picket, you protest, you petition, you talk about it in the public square, you talk to your legislature, you petition your parliament to make sure that this legislation does not become law. And if it passes,
Mhm.
everything in your power to bring, but also to have it thrown from your book.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wanguzi. You were breaking up a bit, but I think what you were trying to say, because I had some questions here written down to ask both of you, but I think you tackled some of them. I wanted to ask you if how would we advise the official opposition party
Mhm.
to tackle this? But you know, mentioned tackling it in the courts, protesting, and I'm guessing how that would work is that they would look at the document, pick it apart, and then come up with the best plan and submit it.
Mhm.
Also, I wanted to ask you, both of you, is this something similar to the recent crackdown in Europe and the use of the internet during most of the protests? Can you see what is being done there, something that could be enforced there potentially if we're not careful?
Yeah, I mean, we've just lived through COVID, right? And at first they tried to bring ridicule to folks who were demonstrating against the vaccinations in the US, saying that they're supporters of Trump. And then you had large demonstrations in Europe. I mean, some of the largest in Germany, a country that I had the opportunity to visit often, and highly educated population. So clearly, you cannot just brush aside all of these Germans who were demonstrating and say that these are people who think that the Earth is flat, and and their conspiracy theories and whatever. No, because they've done a manipulation on the global population through that COVID thing, where they have worked people into becoming submissive. You have to believe the state. And I work in science, and I can tell you, I've never seen the scientific community in Canada being so aligned. Like everybody had to say exactly the same thing. And in the case of France, you had a man who was given the Nobel Prize in medicine who said, it's not a good idea to use mRNA for a vaccine. And then all of a sudden they say the man is out of his mind. Well, when did he lose his mind? You gave him a Nobel Peace of
That's a
Medicine.
good point.
So this is to say, like, I take these extreme cases, and I think it makes sense for you to make the connection with what's happening in Europe, because of course there are certain things they cannot apply against the European population the same way they will apply it in some other places in the Caribbean, for instance, because the demonstrations are larger and it's their own turf. Here in the Caribbean, they can use us as guinea pigs, and then implement afterwards. So that's why I think the thesis that this could be a test should not be dismissed. However, I think with regards to the various strategies that were proposed, definitely having programs like this where you take apart different articles, just looking at the words like annoyance. You cannot be using seriously you know annoyance as something that is punishable of 7 years of prison. Like, it makes no sense. And now you have an apparatus in your country where you have people in parliament, right? But if this passes, while apparently right now I think Mia Mottley's party dominates the parliament, right? So I would think that they would want to rush this thing to get it done. Okay, so that it will be difficult to undo anything that's already passed. I also heard from the last time I participated in this program, that you do not yet have a constitution, a Republican constitution. Like, if you don't have a Republican constitution, you've declared yourself a republic. To me, that's first order of priority, as opposed to talking about all of these other things that could wait, unless, like I said, there's some kind of crisis in Barbadian community that everybody agreed upon, and you came to a conclusion that yes, we need this bill right away. Otherwise, I really think that you guys are being used as guinea pigs.
Or maybe, I think maybe we might even be overthinking it. I said this on the last time we were on this show, that cybercrime bills are not, when properly implemented, they actually protect citizens personal freedoms and rights, because obviously with with the proliferation of the internet and mobile phone technology, malicious actors can access personal records through your phone or financial records and do all sorts of damage to a person's reputation and life. So cybercrime bills around the world have kind of popped up to protect um, um, uh, people's personal data. Um, but I think though is the more conservative approach to why this is happening is that they're trying to sneak in repression because they need it to stay in power. If you ask me, that's probably more likely what is happening. So cybercrime legislation would have been passed to protect the data that's in your phone, to protect people from like cybercrime. Everybody agrees with that. In fact, there's a standard that's used, like many pieces of progressive legislation. There's a UN standard that's used to around the world as a as a template that countries are using. But what tends to happen is that when you have a person in power, a regime in power that's interested in extending its tentacles into people's lives and being repressive and changing the power dynamics within a country, they see this and they think, wait, we can actually use this to our advantage so that we stay in power, and so that we silence dissent, and so that we control the population, along with other pieces of legislation like what we described earlier um, with having a police force. This reminds me of the book, uh, The Animal Farm, where if you've read that book, it's about a revolution that happens on a farm where farm animals chase away human beings. Then they set up their own egalitarian society. Then some really clever pigs then take power, and then they start to behave like human beings, and then even they are overrun. In other words, Mia Motley has taken the reins of power from a former colonial master, and instead of, as you're saying, setting up a republican government, she's trying to replicate the powers of a queen or the powers of royalty, um, just so that she can get away with what she wants to do in terms of staying in power, in terms of like, as I'm seeing comments coming in, privatizing water services, water utilities, because they know they cannot deliver these services to the people. And they know, obviously, the Barbadian people being a free and expressive people will come out and oppose and give their opinions and get to the public squares in social media and beyond to air their opposition. So I'm going to take a really conservative approach. I don't think there's a sinister, global force behind it. I think the extent to which um, globalization can be blamed here is cyber offenses, but also the origins of cybercrime bills, which, if properly implemented, as I said, actually protect people's privacy and digital rights. However, you have a government who is looking everywhere as hard as they can to find opportunities to broaden the scope of their powers, which they
Mhm.
probably currently don't have, and probably can't control right now. So Barbadians, if you're hearing this, the time to fight this bill is not tomorrow, it's now. Because even if you stay in your house and make the wrong tweet in a year, um, I'm betting they're going to then use the task force to come and pick you up in your home and put you in jail. So the time to fight this bill is now.
Well, can I add one final comment? Your microphone is not on.
Thank you very much, because I was now about to say something. But yes, you can add something, because I got another question. I know that we're running out of time, so
Yeah.
you can go ahead and then I'll ask.
Yes, well, I think we should not also leave aside the importance of the diaspora here, because, I've met many Bajans and I know many Bajans have studied abroad. and have, are living in Canada, the United States, etc. This would be something that targets them in particular, because that's their connection, with the motherland, communicating online and participating in the political process as much as they can while being abroad. And so it's a very important thing, because the question is, who owns the land in Barbados? And so a lot of those who have left Barbados either for studies or work abroad, uh, they have to be very careful, because there are folks who seriously, I know at least that's the case in Canada, who have been saying it for years. We even have an MP here who said it, that Canada should have its own Caribbean island. Okay. And they're quite serious when they say that, because it's cold here in, in in November. And so, you know, so by and there are many ways of doing it. You can just increase the cost of real estate, uh, and then all of a sudden you have millionaires owning your island. And so if you cannot even criticize what the government is doing,
Mhm.
you don't have proper representation in the parliament, um, you will be very disappointed with the so-called independence that you guys have fought to gain, and that I think you deserve. There are too many smart people in Barbados to allow this to slide, I think.
Thank you very much. And what I want to ask, because I think this is going to be something that we need to take very seriously. If
Mm.
this bill passes, does the judiciary have the ability to oppose this, or can it be repealed after it is passed? I want to know, like, in countries where something similar like this has been implemented, has the courts helped anybody? Like, can you get over this? Because $70,000 or imprisonment is really serious when you think about it. Where
Yeah.
most people are struggling at the day-to-day living, where you're gonna find $70,000 or be approved for a $70,000 loan to give the government?
So
Because
yeah.
if you're somebody who may be like people in the comments currently, you may be seen as a high risk person who would need to get multiple $70,000 loans, and the bank may say, "Man, we can't give you this loan because, unfortunately, based on your internet history and comments, we don't think that this is going to be a one-off $70,000 loan." How
Mm.
do you propose that we tackle this? What should we be careful and aware of?
So what is really concerning to me is a comment that that my brother here passed earlier, which is your constitution is still on shaky ground because you're in this sort of transitionary period, right? And normally, the Constitution's Bill of Rights, which is where a lot of the powers of the first term of government, in other words, the powers of the citizen and protections from oppression from a government come from. So the Bill of Rights typically will talk about the freedom of speech, freedom of association, rights to life, etc. So your constitution, being one that is transitionary, is also very uh, it's a very dangerous time. And I think whoever conceived of this bill was aware of that, because if your constitution has provisions protecting um, right to free expression, if it is progressive and has provisions in which due process is required by law, which is also something that typically comes through a Bill of Rights. Um, so things like unconstitutional search and seizure, which is part of this legislation. So it's a very strategic time for whoever was trying to pass this bill, or wherever it's originating from, whether it's the prime minister or the powers that be. They know this, and they know that it's a vulnerable time for the country to essentially effect, you know, a coup on the constitution, because you pass a bill like this, it becomes law. Then you're trying to pass a constitution that's progressive, but you already have these laws that you can use as instruments against the citizens, right? So one of the strategies to drag it on until you have the necessary protections from your constitution. Because in Kenya, what has happened is anytime any piece of legislation, including, interestingly, in Kenya, this happened in 2017, and in 2022, again, there's a challenge to the presidential election itself, using our constitution, that if certain thresholds were not met, certain standards of integrity were not met in the presidential vote, then that president who was declared by the Electoral Boundaries Commission was not duly elected. And we went back to the polls because we have a progressive constitution. So I think I'm concerned with Barbados because you're still in that kind of environment where you're shepherding a new dispensation, and the individuals who are in power, instead of being visionary and creating an even more perfect society, they're using this as an opportunity to consolidate power and to also create an oppressive system. And the problem with that is that, what are the presidential, the prime ministerial terms? Maybe 3 or 4, whatever, however long that person stays in power. But Mia Mottley is not always going to be there. She's gonna, expire at some point. She's gonna lose power. Those pieces of legislations will be used against her and her colleagues. In addition, you leave a burden in the legislation that, or a precedent in the legislation, that it's okay to pass this kind of oppressive legislation in the country, and that's why it's so dangerous. Because it sets a precedent that we are okay to do these kinds of things. So I think I'm really disappointed because Barbados is one of those parts of the Caribbean that is viewed, even without having ever been there before, it's viewed as being progressive. But when you hear that was just superficial, it's very disappointing. And I think Barbadians, just as a whole, don't sit back at home, because when legislation like this becomes law, there's a famous saying that when oppression becomes the law, resistance becomes duty, and oppression is becoming the law in Barbados. So resistance from the Barbadian people, and this cannot come from anyone else, is your duty, because if you don't do it for yourselves, then you're shackling your children and your grandchildren with a country that will not work for them.
I just want to take this time to ask you guys to give your final comments because time is getting slim and I want you both to get your final says before we have to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if there's one thing you want Barbadians to leave here right now tonight with, what is it?
Well, I'll take the analogy that Nathan used at the beginning about the camel starting with, with his head, and then it went downhill very quickly, before the night was over. 20 years ago, Haiti had a parliament with 7,000 elected officials, from local officials all the way to the president. And yeah, the oppression, it can start with legislation, but they might take away all of what you currently have if you don't stand up to defend it while you have it. Today, when they talk about Haiti, they're saying that it's gangs, U.S. armed, all of them U.S. armed, who are controlling the territory. And people would think that, well, it has always been like that. No, we had a parliament, we had all of the systems, and they gradually broke it down to create that chaos. I don't think people in Barbados can afford to sit and watch. You have a beautiful island, you have beautiful people, and we are a people who fight to have everything that we have. Don't take it for granted. And thank you for welcoming me in your space today.
Thank you very much for being here, Eugene. Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, every time I speak on this show, I go back to the wise words of Bob Marley. The last time I spoke about fighting like a lion. This time I'll talk about waking up and standing up. Wake up, stand up, and stand up for your rights. Don't give up that fight, because if we um, if we let it slide, it's going to be the cyber bill today, and then tomorrow it will be another piece of legislation. My brother had referred earlier to the apartheid government. The apartheid government was not constructed in a day. There's a famous saying that Rome was not built in a day. Oppressive governments, repressive systems, they're not constructed in a day. It always starts with that one piece of legislation. In the case of South Africa, it was the Bantus Act, where they first started by separating people according to races. Then there was controls on people's movements. Then there was controls on the educational system. So there's a lot more down the pike. So if you see it, in Kenya we say, if the sign of rain, dalili ya mvua ni mawingu. In other words, if you see the clouds gathering, know that it's going to rain. And I would call the cyber crime bill a prelude to something else that's going to come down the pike. You already have the task force in place. Then you're going to have a repressive cybercrime bill. The next thing, they're going to want to control your communications, your spoken communications, other than written communications. The next thing you know, they're going to be controlling your educational system. The next thing you know, they'll be controlling what you eat, what you can buy, what you can say. It never stops. Once people test power, and they say power corrupts, and it corrupts absolutely, uh, then it never stops. So Brazilians should stand up and fight against this cybercrime bill. And the other thing I must say is, over and above the cybercrime bill, you now know that you have people in power who want to take power away from the people. So in the next election, make sure you organize, make sure you vote against these people, because they're going to corrupt your country. And 10, 20 years down the line, as my brother is saying, you won't recognize the country in which you live in. Haiti was an island paradise. Haiti was an island paradise, and look at what they've done to it today. So we still want to be able to come to Barbados as like the premier destination 5, 10, 15 years from now. And it's the Barbadian people who are going to have to protect it. If you're waiting for someone else to do it for you, then you're already in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much for Dr. Nathan Wanguzi and also Jane St. Hill, that your presentations were excellent. And I'm glad that you were able to come here tonight and really go into detail about the Barbadian cybercrime bill and comparing it to other cybercrime bills and how it would impact us going forward if we do not act now. I am hoping to see you guys again in the future. And I just want to say again, thank you very much for coming on tonight. And I
Yeah.
want you guys to enjoy the rest of your night. We really do need to be angry and act now. What I'm going to do quickly is just recap on our night, because our night was wonderful. We started out with the segment with the former Senator Maxine McCLEAN, where she tackled the TAP program, Transport Augmentation Program. And we know that that was just the beginning conversation for that particular program. Then we went into the acting president of the Democratic Labour Party speaking about where the party is currently, conference, and what is the plan going forward and how you can be a part of that plan. Then we went on to the international activists speaking on the cybercrime bill in Barbados, and they brought so many things to the table and they uncovered some of our eyes, because I don't think we understood how serious this cybercrime bill is if we allow this to pass. That is why we need to come out and march, because we cannot let this slide. We need to make sure that this is not left unseen, unvoiced. We are the future, we are the opposition, and we must do our part as well. I just want to thank all of the members of the opposition, everybody who came on tonight, everybody in diaspora, everybody here in Barbados, everybody wherever you are, for coming on tonight. Thank you very much for supporting me hosting. I want to thank Marcia and Dave for allowing me this opportunity. And I don't think this would be the last time I would be hosting, but it was absolutely wonderful to be here tonight. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you again. Let me see, let me make sure I covered everything. And then we're going to play a song before we leave. But thank you, everybody, for being here. And it was absolutely wonderful for having all of you on tonight, Opposition.
Promise us a better tomorrow. Tell me that the suffering done. Me a take the vote and let me down. Me a take the vote and let me down. She did only want little dealing, big contracts and not corruption. Me a take the vote and let me down. Me a take the vote and let me down. Barbados is too small for me. My pocket full now, you and job they promise me. And a girl like me want power and more money. You cry transparency, but that's a no for me. Promise us a better tomorrow. Tell me that the suffering done. Me a take the vote and let me down. Me a take the vote and let me down. She did only want little dealing, big contracts and not corruption. Me a take the vote and let me down. Me a take the vote and let me down.
That mass nor English, English. Pretending to be good, I pretending to be good, just pretending to be good. I pretending to be good, I just pretending to care about people. 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 Pretending, and I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. I'm pretending to be good. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people.
Thank you very much, everybody, for logging on tonight. Opposition, it was wonderful to have you all here. I hope everybody who's on your road get home safely and everybody have a good night. And see you again later in the week.